Chapter 179. The descendant's self-sword trembled slightly, revealing half of its blade. Then, a terrifying sword-based Taoist rhyme emanated, and a bright sword ray shot out from the blade. The sword ray locked onto Murong Feiyu, making it hard for him to dodge. Not good. Murong Feiyu instantly made a decision. He unsheathed his long sword and unleashed his Taoist rhyme, unleashing a wave of heat. However, the sword ray tore through the wave of heat and landed on his body, tearing apart his spiritual energy barrier and sending him flying dozens of feet away. How is this possible? Murong Feiyu spat out a mouthful of blood as he lay on the ground with a pale face. His eyes were filled with horror. Lan Yu glanced at him and shook her head. This is only a third of Master Sword Chi, yet you can't even handle it. What right do you have to challenge Master? Leave now. Lan Yu then carried the sheathed descendant self-sword and left. So this is the Murong clan's honorable swordsman? He's nothing special. How pitiful. He came to challenge him, but he couldn't even handle half of his sword chi. This Chu Kuangren is really scary. Could it be that Murong Feiyu is too weak? That's possible. Murong Feiyu's expression turned uglier as he listened to the whispers around him. Moreover, he was defeated so easily without even seeing Chu Kuangren. The more he thought about it, the more indignant he felt. Stop right there. Leave your sword behind. Murong Feiyu yelled and leaped into the air. Sword-based Taoist rhyme emanated from his body and formed a raging wave of fire towards Lan Yu. However, Lan Yu's back was facing him at that moment. The crowd could not help but curse at how shameless he was. Trying to steal the sword just because he can't win? How shameless. Is this how the Murong clan does sneak attacks? Some people closed their eyes as they could not bear to see a beauty like Lan Yu perish just like that. However, at that moment, the descendant self-sword in Lan Yu's arms trembled and was unsheathed with a clang. An unparalleled sword ray was unleashed. The sword chi contained a destructive sword-based Taoist rhyme that tore through the wave of fire. A mist of blood exploded in the air. Murong Feiyu was sliced in half by the sword ray. With a buzzing sound, the Kunwu sword returned to its scabbard. The sharp sword Taoist rhyme that filled the sky dissipated, and everything returned to normal. If not for Murong Feiyu's corpse on the ground, everyone would have suspected that they were hallucinating. This is the remaining two-thirds of the sword chi. A sneak attack from the back is despicable. You deserve to die. After Lan Yu finished speaking, he hugged his sword and left without looking back. Everyone who had intended to watch a good show was stunned on the spot. They couldn't help but gasp in shock. A single sword chi was used twice. 1/3 to defeat a supremacy, 2/3 to kill a supremacy. F***ck, what kind of operation is this? It was too terrifying. Chu Kuangren hasn't even shown himself, but a single sword chi alone has such terrifying power. Just how powerful is he? Too strong. Being ranked first in the sword spectrum isn't a joke. Awesome, awesome. Among all the sky prides who came to the hidden sword canyon this time, Chu Kuangren's strength is probably the strongest. How terrifying. I think so too. The sword cultivators who were secretly observing were all very surprised. They did not expect an honorable to be easily killed by a single sword chi without even seeing Chu Kuangren's face. This kind of strength was too shocking. Inside a private room, the atmosphere was a little tense. Streaks of fine sword chi were moving around inside the room, destroying everything around it. Not a single wineglass or table was spared, and even the walls were slashed with sword marks. These sword chi originated from a young man in the room. This young man was wearing a long black robe. His black hair reached his waist, and his brows were long and narrow, making him look a little mean. At that moment, his face was filled with a gloomy expression. Chu Kuangren. How dare he kill my people? This person was Murong Feiyu's follower. The Murong clan's young emperor, Murong Yu. Young emperor, do you want to deal with this person now? Behind Murong Yu, a gray-robed elder said with a cold gaze. Murong Feiyu was a follower of Murong Yu, and the two of them had a good relationship. Now that he was killed, he also hated Chu Kuangren to the core. The sword gauntlet is about to open. I need to recuperate and prepare to attack the sword gauntlet. Revenge will have to wait. Murong Yu gritted his teeth and said, the sword gauntlet was of great importance. His clan's sage once said that the last floor of the sword gauntlet hid a great opportunity of fortune. Compared to that opportunity of fortune, revenge was insignificant. D***M*, I wanted Feiyu to test Chu Kuangren's strength, but I didn't expect this to happen. This Chu Kuangren is really a strong opponent. Although Murong Yu hated him, he had to admit Chu Kuangren's strength. If they were to fight, he might not win. By the way, young emperor, there's another news. Speak. Someone saw the Murong clan's third young master with Chu Kuangren. He's now a Taoist of the Black Heaven sect. Upon hearing that, Murong Yu's eyes were filled with surprise. He then sneered and said, what an unexpected gain. I can't believe that bastard has gone to the Black Heaven sect after so many years without any news. This trip to the Sword Gauntlet is getting more and more interesting. The number of forces in the Hidden Sword Canyon was increasing. Sword cultivators from the One Mountain, One Sect, and 2 families arrived one after another. Besides the 4 most famous swordsmanship forces, there were also representatives from other top-notch forces. These sword cultivators gathered together. Although there were occasional conflicts, there were no major battles. Everyone was waiting for the sword gauntlet to open. Chu Kuangren had been idle for the past few days. After he killed Murong Feiyu, no one came to challenge him anymore. Although there were occasionally arguments about him being ranked number 1 in the 100-sword spectrum, it was not a big deal and did not affect him. Boom! On that day, a ray of sword chi suddenly shot up into the sky. In an instant, the entire Hidden Sword Canyon trembled. The Taoist rhymes in the countless sword marks trembled as if they were about to burst out from the sword marks. All the sword cultivators sensed it and looked towards the direction of the sword gauntlet. The sword gauntlet is open. One by one, the cultivators rushed towards the sword gauntlet. Most of the sword cultivators were repelled by an invisible force field when they got close to the sword gauntlet, unable to enter. What's going on? Why can't I get in? Many people's expressions changed as they were shocked. Some of the honorables did not believe it and tried to break through the force field by force. However, they were blasted away by an invisible force. This is a barrier set up by a few sages. How dare a mere honorable try to break through it? Someone could not help but sneer. It's a sage? That's right. The sages behind the One Mountain, One Sect, and 2 families are stopping us from entering the sword gauntlet. Every time the sword gauntlet opens, only 30 people are allowed to enter. How can they let small fries get their hands on it? A sword cultivator who knew the inside story sneered. This is too overbearing. Why can they occupy the sword gauntlet and not allow us to enter? Another sword cultivator said unhappily. Because they're sages. Everyone could not help but fall silent when they heard that. Such was the way of the world. Being weak was a sin. Only those with bigger fists could reason. Most mortals were like that, let alone the cultivators who valued strength. Chapter 180. The sword gauntlet was opened, and the sword chi soared into the sky like rainbows. The saints behind the One Mountain, One Sect, and 2 clans made their move, setting up a restriction that made it difficult for outsiders to approach. Not long after, the disciples of the various sage orthodoxies arrived. The first to arrive were the people from the Murong clan. Murong Yu led a few of the Murong clan's disciples who were qualified to enter the sword gauntlet. Next was the Linghu family, Tempest Mountain. Chu Kuangren had also arrived with Nangong Huang and the others. They attracted a lot of attention when they arrived, and most of them were focused on Chu Kuangren, who was standing at the front of the group. A few days ago, the news of Chu Kuangren killing an honorable with 2/3 of his sword chi had spread far and wide, causing quite a stir in the Hidden Sword Canyon. The prodigies of the various orthodoxies were extremely curious about him. This person is Chu Kuangren, the top student in the sword spectrum. Truly extraordinary. It's rumored that this person's battle prowess is unparalleled, and he can easily kill supremes, or even supremes. It seems like he's going to be our greatest enemy this time. There were also some female cultivators whose eyes lit up when they saw Chu Kuangren. They suddenly felt that all the men around them were not worth mentioning at all. In the direction of Tempest Mountain, a swordsman who was dressed in plain clothes and carrying a sword stared at Chu Kuangren with a battle intent in his eyes. Chu Kuangren noticed her gaze and looked over as well. However, his gaze was different from that of the plain-clothed swordsman, which was filled with fighting intent. His expression was very calm, and he only took a glance before shifting his gaze. Oh, is he disdainful? The plain-clothed swordsman raised his eyebrows. Many of the surrounding sword cultivators also noticed this scene. TSK, the Tempest Mountain's lunatic swordsman, has his eyes on Chu Kuangren now. Jian lunatic's strength is not simple. Rumor has it that he has defeated a few ancient geniuses and is crazy about swords. His strength is extremely terrifying. Before Chu Kuangren entered the world, the older generation of sword cultivators once said that this person's sword Dao was the best among the younger generation. Everyone discussed in private. Lunatic Jian, whose real name was Ling Feng, was the young emperor of Tempest Mountain. Among all the young emperors, his strength was definitely in the top 5. Because he was crazy about swords, he was passionate about challenging swordsmen. He did not even let the older generation of swordsmen go, so he was known as the sword lunatic. Chu Kuangren was not interested in this so-called lunatic swordsman. Just now, he had used the Eye of Revelation to scan the area and realized that none of the Sky Prides present could make him worry. On the contrary, his own team was a little strange. Murong, what's wrong? Chu Kuangren looked at Murong Xian and asked. Ever since they arrived at the sword gauntlet, Murong Xian had been hiding at the back of the group as if he was unwilling to face anyone. Nothing. Murong Xian shook his head. Yo, isn't this young Master Murong? At this moment, a ruminating voice came from the Murong family's camp. A young man walked out and looked at Murong Xian. Young Master Murong, it's been so many years since we last saw you. We thought that you had died somewhere in a corner. Who would have thought that you'd run off to the Black Heaven sect? Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. He did not expect Murong Xian to have some kind of entanglement with the Murong family. Murong Hai, what do you want? Murong Xian said with an ugly expression. Nothing much. I just wanted to say a few words to your brothers. Judging from their expressions, I guess they still don't know that you're the daughter of a lowly servant girl from the Murong family, Murong Hai said playfully. Behind him, a few disciples of the Murong family looked at Murong Xian's ugly expression as if they were watching a good show. A young master born to a lowly servant girl. Unable to survive in the Murong family, he ran off to the Black Heaven sect to become a Taoist. Speaking of which, the Black Heaven sect is really too much. How dare you take in all kinds of trash? While Murong Hai was speaking, a majestic Taoist rhyme suddenly erupted beside him. His expression changed as he tried to activate his Taoist rhyme to resist it. However, that majestic Taoist rhyme turned into a godly mountain and instantly slammed onto his body. The violent force immediately sent him flying hundreds of feet away. He tumbled on the ground for a dozen times before he smashed into the cliff wall of the canyon. Why are you chattering like a fly? How annoying! Chu Kuangren slowly fiddled with his fingers. Taoist rhymes were still circulating around his fingertips. It was obvious that he was the one who attacked just now. Chu Kuangren, how dare you? How dare you attack a sage? ***. The people of the Murong family immediately glared at Chu Kuangren. Waves of Taoist rhymes erupted towards them. However, when Chu Kuangren's eyes turned cold, a surge of sword-based Taoist rhyme that was far more terrifying than theirs surged and dispersed their Taoist rhymes like a tsunami. Every disciple of the Murong family turned pale. You're the ones who are being presumptuous. I don't care what kind of conflict Murong Xian has with the Murong family, but he is now a Taoist of the Black Heaven sect. There's no doubt about that. Insulting him is equivalent to provoking the Black Heaven sect. Based on that alone, I'm already giving face to the Murong family's sage by not killing him on the spot. If you still can't control your mouth, I'll kill you. Chu Kuangren's words were as sharp as a knife, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. His words left the people of the Murong family speechless as their expressions changed. Meanwhile, Nangong Huang, Jun Yi, and the others stood beside Chu Kuangren and stared coldly at the people of the Murong family. Their stance was clear. Murong Xian was not to be insulted, and the Black Heaven sect was even more so. "All right, stop messing around." At that moment, a voice came from the void. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. That was a sage. Young people always like to mess around. Oh, challenging the Black Heaven sect is considered as messing around? Two more sages' voices were heard. Chu Kuangren remembered one of them was the Black Heaven Third Forefather's voice. "Brother Third Taoist, do you still want to pursue this matter?" You should be glad that Kuangren is merciful and only gave that filthy young man a slap. Otherwise, I'll definitely kill him." The Black Heaven Third Forefather snorted. When everyone heard that, they looked at the half-dead Murong Hai who had been slammed into the rock wall. They could not help but shiver. "Tsk, how merciful. I only beat him half to death." But at that moment, the void trembled. Not far away, the sword chi from the sword gauntlet retracted, and the long-sealed door of the sword gauntlet opened with a creak. An ancient and sharp Taoist rhyme emanated from it. Everyone looked at the sword gauntlet. "The sword gauntlet has opened. Let them in." The sage's voice rang out again. After that, the people from Tempest Mountain were the first to enter, followed by the representatives from the other orthodoxies. Only 30 people were allowed to enter the sword gauntlet. The one mountain, one sect, and 2 families each had 5, while the remaining 10 were distributed among the other forces. However, things were a little different today. Everyone noticed that only 4 people from the Linghu family had entered the sword gauntlet. The other person was nowhere to be found. "Let's go." Chu Kuangren patted Murong Xian's shoulder and said, "We'll talk about your matters later. Now, let's enter the sword gauntlet." "Yes, elder senior brother." Murong Xian nodded. The group then walked towards the sword gauntlet. There were a total of 6 people from the Black Heaven sect who entered the sword gauntlet. When everyone thought about the Linghu family losing a spot, and then saw that the Black Heaven sect had an extra spot, they suddenly had some guesses. "Tsk, looks like the Black Heaven sect has something on the Linghu family that they're willing to give up a spot. Interesting, interesting. I wonder if anyone can reach the top of the sword gauntlet this year." Chapter 181. In front of the sword gauntlet, a group of swordsmanship sky prides were staring at the tower. As they got closer, they could feel the mysterious Taoist rhymes contained within the sword gauntlet. It was something they could not comprehend. However, the people of the Linghu clan were not in the mood to understand such mysteries. They could not understand it anyway. Instead, they heard the comments of the people around them, which made their faces turn ugly. The other sky prides looked at them mockingly. Obviously, the fact that the Linghu clan had one less slot made them think of something, and they were gloating. Chu Kuangren. The Linghu young emperor, Linghu Teng, stared at Chu Kuangren with hatred in his eyes. To him, it was all Chu Kuangren's fault. Not only that, but the clone that he had refined was also destroyed by Chu Kuangren. This made him hate Chu Kuangren to the extreme. Chu Kuangren also noticed Linghu Teng's hatred towards him, and he smirked. "Oh, isn't this the one that I've destroyed?" Everyone looked at him curiously. It seems that Linghu Teng has some history with Chu Kuangren. Could it be related to the Linghu clan losing a slot this time? Who knows? Linghu Teng said coldly after hearing Chu Kuangren's words, "That was just a clone of mine." "You're so happy just because you killed a clone of mine?" Chu Kuangren. "If your clone is so weak, how strong can your real body be? Do you want to try? If you don't want to challenge the sword gauntlet, I don't mind destroying you here and now." Chu Kuangren laughed. That's enough. Let's enter the sword gauntlet." Linghu Teng wanted to say something but was stopped by third forefather Linghu. He glared at Chu Kuangren and then led the few sky prides of the Linghu clan into the sword gauntlet. The others entered one by one. "Chu Kuangren, I look forward to a battle with you once we're out of the sword gauntlet." Tempest Mountain's lunatic swordsman said to Chu Kuangren. "Do whatever you want." Chu Kuangren smiled. There was one more thing that he did not say. "Do whatever you want, I'm invincible." Everyone entered the sword tower one by one, and with every additional person that entered, there would be an additional dot of light in the pitch-black floor of the sword tower. That dot of light represented the sword cultivators who had entered. At this moment, these light spots were all gathered on the first floor, and each light spot had a unique aura of each person. With just a little bit of perception, one could tell who was who. Chu Kuangren and the others entered the sword gauntlet too. Chu Kuangren was surprised. The moment he entered the sword gauntlet, he realized that Nangong Huang and the others had disappeared. He was the only one left. Is this some kind of spatial mechanism? Everyone will be assigned to a different space, but they will all be in the same sword tower. The person who built the sword tower is very familiar with the use of spatial power. This person must be at least at the level of a Saint King. Chu Kuangren muttered. Cultivators could come into contact with and use the power of space at the Dongshu realm, but that was only the most basic use. For example, the War King domain used a certain amount of spatial power. The further one went, the more profound the Tao of space became. Very few people could walk the path of the Tao of space to the end. Chu Kuangren stopped thinking about it. He saw a flight of stairs not far away. This should be the stairs to the second floor. Chu Kuangren slowly walked up, but he realized that there was a barrier in front of him. Is this the test? Chu Kuangren casually unleashed a palm attack. A majestic Taoist rhyme erupted and easily destroyed the barrier. Chu Kuangren then walked towards the second floor. Next, Chu Kuangren realized that there was such a barrier between every floor, and it was getting stronger as the floor increased. However, this was nothing to Chu Kuangren. With a palm attack, not a single barrier could stop him. He was ascending at a terrifying speed. Outside the sword gauntlet, the crowd was dumbfounded as they watched the light spot that belonged to Chu Kuangren rapidly ascending. He's ascending way too fast. He's already on the 8th floor. As expected of Chu Kuangren. He's really powerful. Wait a minute. Look, besides Chu Kuangren, lunatic swordsmen, Murong Yu, and Ling Hu Teng are also ascending very quickly. They're following closely behind Chu Kuangren. This time, there are really a lot of talented swordsmen. That's right. The sages who were secretly observing were not surprised by this scene. The first few floors are just appetizers. The later floors are the real highlight. From the 20th floor onward, things won't be so simple anymore. Yeah, let's see how far they can go. This is the sword gauntlet's biggest opportunity of fortune. No one has been able to obtain it for so many years. I wonder if anyone will be able to do it this time. These sages were all sky prides when they were young. They had entered the sword gauntlet before, so they were quite familiar with it. On the 20th floor of the sword gauntlet. At that moment, a person appeared in front of Chu Kuangren. It was a faceless swordsman with a blank face. Oh, there's a change. Chu Kuangren's interest was piqued. When the faceless swordsman sensed Chu Kuangren's arrival, he charged towards Chu Kuangren with his sword, and a powerful sword chi instantly erupted. Chu Kuangren still raised his hand and unleashed a palm attack. The human mountain stamp shattered the faceless swordsman, and after the swordsman exploded, it turned into countless sword chi that dissipated. An existence formed by the condensation of sword chi. Intrigued, Chu Kuangren then proceeded to the next floor. After the 20th floor, Chu Kuangren encountered faceless swordsmen formed by sword chi. These people's strength gradually increased from the battle monarch realm, and by the 38th floor, they were already at the honorable realm. Is this really a test for sky prides? TSK, isn't this a little too strict? I'm already at the honorable realm. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and smashed the honorable realm cultivator into pieces. Among the younger generation, not many people possessed the combat strength of an honorable realm cultivator, and this was only the 38th floor. There were still 12 more floors. When he stepped onto the 39th floor, he did not encounter any obstacles this time. However, there were some changes to the staircase. Murals began to appear on both sides of the staircase. For example, the 39th floor had a mural of a mountain. Upon closer inspection, it contained a surge of Taoist rhyme, as if it recorded some mysterious sword Tao technique that could subconsciously captivate one. At the entrance of the staircase, there was a line of words. Only by understanding a trace of the mural's Taoist rhyme can one proceed to the next floor. Chu Kuangren had the meditational clarity attribute, and his own Tao technique realm was no weaker than a sage's, so he quickly understood the mural. What was recorded inside was a sage technique. It was the same on the 40th floor. If we go further up, is there a sage technique recorded on every floor's staircase? Is this purely a test of our comprehension? No, that's not right. There's also the Taoist core. If one's comprehension isn't strong enough and can't understand the Taoist rhyme contained in the sage technique, they won't be able to proceed to the next floor. However, if one's Taoist core isn't strong enough and is too engrossed in the sage technique, they won't be able to proceed to the next floor. Comprehension and Taoist core are both indispensable. Chu Kuangren murmured. The person who built the sword gauntlet was truly ingenious. They've reached the part with the murals on the staircase. Back then, I couldn't pass because I was too engrossed in the sage technique. Outside the sword gauntlet, a sage said, "It's the same for me. 2 hours. If you stay in the staircase for more than 2 hours, you'll be considered a failure and be teleported out of the sword gauntlet. This stage is too difficult." A sage shook his head and sighed. As soon as he finished, a white light flashed at the entrance of the sword gauntlet, and a young man was teleported out. He looked around blankly before his expression turned grim. I failed. Chapter 182. Look, it's the Murong family. He failed. 38th floor. He was defeated on the 38th floor. When everyone saw the person who was teleported out, they began to discuss spiritedly. Right after the Murong family member, a few other people were sent out one after another. They looked at each other in dismay, and helplessness was written all over their faces. Too difficult. That's right. I have to face a supreme being on the 38th floor. How can I, a mere battle king, fight them? It's really too difficult. Tihe, I wonder how those young emperors fought their way through. Look, Chu Kuangren is in the lead now. I'm not surprised. A few more white lights flashed, and a few more people were teleported out. They were all geniuses from sage orthodoxies. Damn it, I'm so close to comprehending the sage technique's Taoist rhyme. I'm so close. A prodigy from Tempest Mountain said with extreme hatred. To be able to comprehend a sage technique in 2 hours, even if one only needed a trace of Taoist rhyme to pass, it was still too difficult. Not many prodigies could do it. Look, Chu Kuangren has reached the 45th floor. Oh my God! At this moment, someone exclaimed. The light dot that represented Chu Kuangren was far ahead of everyone else. How could he be so fast? Ling Hu Teng, Murong Yu, and Jian Lunatic are only on the 40th floor. A prodigy asked in confusion. Have you guys heard of the rumor that Chu Kuangren managed to gain insight into the Steel Forest's 8,000 methods in half a day 3 years ago? Yes. No wonder he could rise so quickly. This guy's comprehension ability is simply not on the same level as ours. How terrifying! Inside the sword gauntlet, Chu Kuangren had the rocksteady Taoist core and the meditational clarity of self as he climbed up like a hot knife through butter. Very soon, he arrived at the 48th floor. This was the highest level that the previous challengers of the Sword Tower could reach. Ever since the Sword Tower appeared, no one had been able to break through it. Just as Chu Kuangren arrived at the 48th floor, an incredibly sharp sword-based Taoist rhyme suddenly locked onto him. A faceless swordsman in white stood in front of him. Chu Kuangren frowned. Oh, this again. He lifted his hand and blasted out a palm strike. A majestic Taoist rhyme erupted and crushed towards the faceless swordsman. However, his opponent lifted his sword and easily tore the palm energy apart. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren chuckled and said, "That's more like it." With a clang, the Kunwu sword at his waist was unsheathed. An extremely majestic and sharp Taoist rhyme spread. The faceless swordsman seemed to have sensed the threat as his aura continued to rise. This swordsman can actually adjust his strength according to my strength? That's just too shameless. Chu Kuangren rolled his eyes. No wonder no one had managed to pass the 48th floor in so many years. This faceless swordsman adjusts his power according to your strength. If you are strong, he will be stronger than you. What was there to fight? He might as well just raise his hands and surrender. But this is where the fun of the challenge comes in. A glint flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes as he made the first move. The two of them collided with each other. Terrifying sword Taoist rhymes collided with each other. Sword chi spread out and impacted the entire sword tower in a frenzy. Outside the sword tower, everyone was puzzled. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I felt the sword tower tremble just now. Hey, you felt it too? Me too. What's going on? The source of the tremor is coming from the 48th floor. Is Chu Kuangren fighting someone? TSK, the 48th floor. No one has ever been able to pass it since the sword tower was created. I wonder if Chu Kuangren can break the record and create a miracle. The sages were also staring intently at the 48th floor. Now, only Chu Kuangren was on the 48th floor. The other sky prides, including the 3 young emperors, were all in the murals. The 48th floor's trial is too terrifying. That swordsman can increase his combat strength infinitely and will always be stronger than you. There's no way to pass it. One of the sages shook his head and said, "That's right. I wonder if Chu Kuangren has any ideas?" Inside the sword tower, Chu Kuangren unleashed his heaven-slaying sword-drawing technique. The majestic emperor's aura filled the air and shocked the entire sword tower. Even an honorable supreme would not be able to withstand that attack. However, the sword chi on the faceless swordsman condensed and unleashed a sword attack. The majestic sword chi was no weaker than Chu Kuangren's. In fact, it was even stronger. When the two forces collided, Chu Kuangren was pushed back a few meters. This was the first time Chu Kuangren felt fear since he entered the realm. It was not fear, but excitement. Honorable Supremes are no match for me. I can even kill Honorable Supremes, and none of the sky prides of my generation are worthy of my attention. I can't defeat a sage, and no one below the sage level can defeat me either. I've never been able to fight to my heart's content. Today, I can finally fight to my heart's content. Chu Kuangren was not afraid that he would die here. Not to mention his immortal body, the sword tower had some kind of protection mechanism that would teleport him away if he was in danger. Chu Kuangren gripped his descendant self sword tightly and dashed out. All kinds of techniques were unleashed from his hands. Heaven-slaying sword-drawing technique, white lotus light of purification, phantom light strike, human mountain stamp, each of them was a shocking cultivation technique in the outside world. 9 Heaven Sword Prison, Green Lotus Sword Song, Sword of the Heavens, the 3 great Taoist physique transformations were unleashed. The 5 supreme foundation levels within his body radiated with a dazzling divine light. Spiritual power whizzed out of his body and crazily slammed into the void. At this moment, Chu Kuangren was like a godly king of swords. Every move he made had a terrifying power that could destroy the world. However, the sword chi that the faceless swordsman emitted was also very terrifying. The stronger Chu Kuangren became, the stronger he became. There were a few times when Chu Kuangren almost could not hold on anymore. However, throughout the battle, he was highly focused. His nerves were stretched taut, and he was constantly in a high-pressure state. During this process, he felt that he had become more proficient in using Tao techniques, and the spiritual mound within his body was trembling. The surrounding spiritual chi gathered towards him, allowing him to step into the complete battle monarch realm. He had broken through in the midst of battle. Limit breakthrough? Very well, let's see if you can get any stronger. Chu Kuangren was pleasantly surprised. He then dashed out again, and his combat strength was even more terrifying than before. The 48th floor shook violently as he fought. Seizing an opportunity, Chu Kuangren slashed out with the descendant self-sword, and the violent energy immediately sent the faceless swordsman flying. The majestic sword chi wreaked havoc on the opponent's body, tearing it apart and shattering it into pieces. Phew, did I succeed? Chu Kuangren panted slightly. However, after that, the sword chi that filled the sky gathered in front of him, and the faceless swordsman reappeared. Moreover, the sword chi on his body was even stronger than before. F***ck me. Even Chu Kuangren could not help but curse. This was just too shameless. He could not be killed, and his combat strength would always be stronger than yours. Was the 48th floor really something that could be passed by humans? He even suspected that the owner of the sword gauntlet did not want anyone to pass. If he didn't want anyone to pass, then there's no need for the 48th floor to exist, let alone the 49th floor. There must be a trick in this that I haven't figured out yet, Chu Kuangren murmured. Chapter 183. Outside the sword tower. One by one, the prodigies were teleported out. Level 47. Just a little more and I will be able to comprehend the sage technique's Taoist rhythm. Damn it. Ling Huting gritted his teeth. He looked at the sword tower with a face full of unwillingness. At this moment, there were only 3 people left in the sword tower. They were Chu Kuangren and lunatic swordsmen on the 48th floor, and Murong Yu on the 47th floor. At that moment, a white light flashed past the entrance of the sword tower. Murong Yu was also transported out. Just like Ling Huteng, he was also stuck at the 47th floor. Neither of them had successfully passed. Lunatic swordsman and Chu Kuangren. I can't believe those two have reached the 48th floor. Murong Yu could not help but narrow his eyes. Since ancient times, there weren't many sword cultivators who could reach the 48th level. I didn't expect there to be 2 this time. That's right. I wonder which of the 2 is stronger? The prodigies outside the sword gauntlet were all discussing among themselves. But Chu Kuangren has been on the 48th floor for quite some time now, hasn't he? He's been here for more than an hour now. A sword cultivator suddenly said. When the crowd heard this, they could not help but gasp. What? More than an hour? F***ck me. Since the beginning of time, only a handful of sword cultivators have been able to reach the 48th floor, and none of them were able to stay there for more than a quarter of an hour. Yet Chu Kuangren managed to stay there for more than an hour? With this alone, he has already created history. As expected of Chu Kuangren. At this moment, lunatic swordsman Ling Feng was teleported out. His aura was extremely dispirited, as if he had just experienced a great battle. 7 moves. I could only withstand 7 moves from the faceless swordsman. The 48th floor is too terrifying. I reckon that among the elites who came to the sword gauntlet this time, I'm the only one who reached the 48th level. It's a pretty good result. After saying this, Ling Feng looked at the sword tower. Then his pupils shrank. There's someone else. There's actually someone who reached the 48th level like me. This aura, it's Chu Kuangren. Although he was shocked, Ling Feng thought about it carefully and felt that it was reasonable. After all, it was very likely that the other party was not weaker than him. How long has he been on the 48th floor? Ling Feng casually asked a sword cultivator beside him. It's almost been 2 hours. Hearing this, Ling Feng's face was filled with disbelief. Impossible. How could someone persist on the 48th level for 2 hours? After all, he had only managed to withstand 7 moves, which was less than half an hour. Yet, Chu Kuangren managed to last for almost an hour? How is this possible? Indeed, it has been almost 2 hours. When I came out, he had just reached the 48th floor. I've always remembered it. A sword cultivator said confidently. Ling Feng's Dao heart trembled when he heard that. He could not even hold on for half a quarter of an hour, but Chu Kuangren was able to hold on for close to an hour. The gap between him and Chu Kuangren was huge. Not only Ling Feng, but the others also felt that it was unbelievable. Do you think he can pass the 48th level? A sword cultivator suddenly said. Impossible. Ling Feng said resolutely and decisively, no one can pass through the 48th level. That level is too terrifying. Since the beginning of time, no one has been able to pass it, not even Chu Kuangren. That's right. You're strong, but that faceless swordsman is even stronger. Let me ask you, how are you going to pass this stage? No matter how strong Chu Kuangren is, it's impossible for him to defeat someone stronger than him. Murong Yu's face was also filled with confidence. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the dot of light that belonged to Chu Kuangren suddenly began to move, and under everyone's watchful eyes, he had arrived at the 49th floor. Everyone was dumbfounded. Nangong Huang and the others looked at Ling Feng and Murong Yu playfully. Who was the one who said that elder senior brother can't pass the stage? Oh my, this slap in the face came so unexpectedly. Ling Feng and Murong Yu's expressions were extremely ugly, but at the same time, they could not believe it as they stared at the sword gauntlet. They had even counted the floors several times. At this time, Chu Kuangren had indeed stopped at the 49th floor. How is this possible? How can anyone pass the 48th floor? That faceless swordsman is always stronger than his opponents. How can he be defeated? How did he do it? Ling Feng and Murong Yu were unwilling to believe this fact. The other sword cultivators were even more shocked. The 48th floor had been passed. The 48th floor that no one had been able to pass for countless years had been passed. At this moment, they were witnessing history. Chu Kuangren is extraordinary. The 48th floor that no one had been able to pass for countless years has been passed. How did he do it? Even the few sages were a little shocked. Just a moment ago, Chu Kuangren was on the 48th floor. While he was battling the faceless swordsman, he was also thinking about how to pass this floor. However, no matter how he thought about it, he could not come up with any good ideas. He even planned to use his immortal body to spend a few days and nights on this floor. However, suddenly, the faceless swordsman turned into sword chi and dissipated. The staircase that led to the 49th floor appeared in front of him. A sudden realization came to him. It turned out that the condition to pass the 48th floor was not to defeat the faceless swordsman. The faceless swordsman could not be defeated. To pass this floor, one could only rely on one word: perseverance. Enduring the faceless swordsman for 2 hours was considered a pass, but it was too difficult to endure the pressure created by the faceless swordsman for 2 hours. An opponent that could not be killed and was always stronger than one was enough to make any opponent despair, let alone endure for 2 hours. Even a quarter of an hour would be difficult. However, Chu Kuangren did it. The 48th floor is already so difficult. What kind of test is there on the 49th floor? Chu Kuangren was looking forward to it. He walked towards the 49th floor. However, the result was very disappointing. The test on the 49th floor was aimed at one's Taoist core, but the moment one stepped on the floor, it would create all kinds of illusions to confuse one. To be honest, this floor was also very difficult, even more so than the 48th floor. The illusions were incredibly realistic, more realistic than the illusions created by the mental staircase that Chu Kuangren had encountered before. Even a sage would not be able to pass this floor's test. However, for Chu Kuangren, who had the rocksteady Taoist core, all these illusions were like fleeting clouds that did not affect him at all. He did not stay on this floor for long before he reached the 50th floor, which was the last floor of the sword gauntlet. However, he did not know how much of a shock he had caused to the crowd outside the sword gauntlet when he passed the 49th floor so quickly. Although the crowd did not know what kind of test was on the 49th floor, they knew that the 49th floor was undoubtedly more terrifying if the 48th floor was already so difficult. Most of them did not expect Chu Kuangren to pass this floor. They were even guessing how long it would take for him to be transported out. However, they did not expect him to reach the last floor so quickly, which made everyone dumbfounded. What kind of test is on the 49th floor? How could he pass it so quickly? Is it that easy? Easy, my asterisk guess. The sword gauntlet gets harder with each floor, so how could the 49th floor be easy? What's going on? The crowd was puzzled. However, they knew that Chu Kuangren was the only person who had successfully reached the top of the sword gauntlet in countless years. He had made history. Chapter 184. He succeeded in reaching the summit. What kind of fortuitous encounter is within the sword tower? This Chu Kuangren is just too amazing. No one has been able to reach the top of the sword gauntlet for so many years, but he actually succeeded. How did he do it? The sages were shocked. Black Heaven's third forefather, on the other hand, was filled with excitement. Haha, as expected of our Black Heaven sect's lead disciple. You can do what others can't. When the other saints saw this, they could not help but feel jealous. They wished that Chu Kuangren was born in their orthodoxy. on the 50th floor of the Sword Tower. When Chu Kuangren arrived at the 50th floor, the scenery in front of him changed. What appeared in front of him was a lake. On the shore of the lake, a man wearing a straw raincoat was fishing. Chu Kuangren slowly walked forward and used his eye of revelation to check his opponent's information. What he saw shocked him to the core. Tranquil Heart Great Emperor, an ancient emperor from 220,000 years ago. His current state is that of an emperor's will body. He's skilled in the sword Dao and cultivates. Due to Chu Kuangren's cultivation level, the Eye of Revelation could not analyze much information about the emperor before him. But that didn't stop him from being shocked. Including the doppelganger of Demon Emperor Pride, the mindful emperor before him was the second emperor he had seen. Chu Kuangren stood silently behind him without saying a word. One was fishing while the other was standing still. After a while, "Little guy, why aren't you talking?" The mindful emperor could no longer sit still and asked curiously. Shouldn't he ask who he was first? Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, did not speak a word the moment he arrived. He did not seem to be worried about his current predicament at all. "Senior is fishing, I dare not disturb you." Chu Kuangren chuckled. When he heard this, the mindful emperor was taken aback. That's it? Was he just going to stand there and not say a word? "Ha, what an interesting little fellow." Emperor Mindful laughed. He then took off his raincoat and bamboo hat, revealing his full appearance. Chu Kuangren glanced at it and was slightly surprised. Because the appearance of the mindful emperor was exactly the same as the white-clothed man he saw when the Taoist rhyme on the signboard of the Sword Tower intersected. As expected, the mindful emperor was the owner of the Sword Tower. And the person who had crossed countless years to discuss the Tao with him was not a saint, but a great emperor. "Little fellow, do you know who I am?" "The master of the Sword Tower." "That's right, this Sword Tower was indeed left behind by me, and I'm an emperor who attained the Tao during the ancient times. My name is Emperor Ming Exin." Chu Kuangren bowed. "Greetings, Emperor." The mindful emperor was stunned. Why was this junior not shocked at all after hearing that he was a great emperor? His Tao heart was too good, wasn't it? However, he did not know that Chu Kuangren had already figured out his identity. The fact that you're able to arrive at the 50th floor of the Sword Tower means that you're already qualified to receive my inheritance. The mindful emperor chuckled. With a wave of his hand, an ancient scripture appeared before Chu Kuangren. The moment the scripture appeared, waves of mysterious Taoist rhymes circulated, and a vast emperor's aura poured out from it. "This is Emperor's scripture." "Oh, you've got quite an eye, little fellow. Speaking of which, I can sense a different emperor's Taoist rhyme from your body. Have you received another emperor's inheritance before? I dare not hide it from you. I've indeed received an emperor's scripture." Chu Kuangren was referring to the eternal emperor's scripture. However, he had gotten it from the raffle. "Oh, which great emperor wrote it? Can you tell me about it?" Chu Kuangren pondered for a while. "The eternal emperor." The mindful emperor pondered for a while before a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. "The eternal emperor. I can't believe it's him. Do you know him, Emperor?" Chu Kuangren was surprised too. He had gotten it from the raffle. Could there really be someone called the eternal emperor? "I don't know him, but I've seen him in the ancient books. He's a great emperor from the ancient times. I can't believe you've received his inheritance. The ancient era. Even to the mindful heart emperor, it was an extremely ancient era. He had only read about it in the ancient books." "I see." Chu Kuangren nodded. Deep down, he was thinking, could it be that the items obtained from the raffle are related to this world? If I have the chance in the future, I'll have to look into this. "You've gotten 2 emperor scriptures. Your luck is really impressive." The mindful emperor was amazed. Then, he handed the mindful emperor scripture to Chu Kuangren. "Besides this emperor scripture, this sword gauntlet is also a treasure. I'll give it to you as well," the mindful emperor said. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. This sword gauntlet was indeed a treasure. Everything else aside, just the sage techniques recorded in the murals were enough to make any sage orthodoxy go green with envy, not to mention the various uses it had. "Thank you, great emperor. By the way, I have a question. The person before me isn't your real body, am I right? Young lad, you've guessed correctly. The one before you now is just a wisp of my emperor's will, the mindful emperor said. Then where is your real body, great emperor? Could it be that you've fallen? F*CKU, I'm still alive and kicking. The mindful emperor rolled his eyes and said angrily. Chu Kuangren scratched his head. I've been rude. I can't tell you where I am, or rather, where the emperors recorded in history are. Once you become an emperor, you'll know everything. As soon as the mindful emperor finished speaking, the wisp of emperors will begin to dissipate. Chu Kuangren bowed at that. Farewell, great emperor. Young lad, you're very talented. I look forward to the day we meet again. I have high hopes for you. The mindful emperor laughed. Chu Kuangren was deep in thought. Today's meeting with the mindful emperor had benefited him greatly. Aside from the emperor's scripture and the sword gauntlet, he had also learned a shocking secret. That was, the emperors of old that were recorded in history might not have died, but were still alive somewhere. That level of secret is not something I can reach now. Chu Kuangren shook his head and stopped thinking about it. After the mindful emperors will dissipated, the lake suddenly trembled. The fishing rod that the mindful emperor left behind swayed gently, and a pitch-black water dragon flew out from the lake. The water dragon was hundreds of meters long, and its body was covered in black scales. A terrifying ferocious chi filled the air. The water dragon rolled in the air and let out a series of roars. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that there was a silver thread wrapped around its mouth. The other end of the silver thread was the fishing rod in front of Chu Kuangren. F*me, the mindful emperor is fishing for a water dragon. Chu Kuangren was dumbfounded. Others were fishing, but the great emperor was fishing for a water dragon? When he thought about it, it did not seem wrong. However, the water dragon was glaring at him fiercely. By the way to control the sword gauntlet is inside the water dragon's body. Young lad, consider this my last test for you. The mindful emperor's voice rang out again. It was the last wisp of emperors left in the fishing rod. Great emperor, you've tricked me! Chu Kuangren cried as he looked at the water dragon that was charging towards him. Chapter 185. The black water dragon pounced towards Chu Kuangren, its ferocious chi surging like a tsunami. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would have been scared out of their wits. However, Chu Kuangren was no ordinary person. His descendant's self-sword slashed across the sky. An incomparably sharp sword chi crazily surged out, slashing at the flood dragon's body. A large number of scales shattered, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Roar! With a miserable howl, the intense pain intensified the black flood dragon's murderous aura. It opened its mouth and spat out a black torrent of spirit force. Chu Kuangren cast the phantom light strike, and his figure disappeared from the spot like a stream of light. When he reappeared, he was already on the right side of the water dragon. He raised his hand and slashed again. Moreover, this sword strike landed precisely on the same spot as before. With a ripping sound, his flesh was torn apart. The black flood dragon was forcibly cut in half and fell back into the lake with a rumble. The waves surged and the flood dragon's blood dyed most of the lake red. On this day, on the 50th floor of the sword gauntlet, Chu Kuangren slayed the evil dragon by the lakeside. Sigh, it's such a shame that no one's here to witness my heroism. Chu Kuangren sighed and sheathed his descendant's self-sword. At that moment, a golden light rushed out from the black flood dragon's corpse and transformed into a fist-sized pearl that was covered with Dao patterns. This is... Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised and reached out to grab the bead in his hand. A wave of enlightenment surged into his mind. This is the core of the sword gauntlet. As long as I can refine it, I'll be able to completely control the sword gauntlet. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. Without delay, he started to refine the core of the sword gauntlet. Outside the sword tower, everyone was staring at the highest level of the sword tower. Once Chu Kuangren reached the final floor, the light dot had remained there without moving at all. It did not move at all and there was no movement at all. Did Chu Kuangren obtain the opportunities of fortune within the sword gauntlet? Who knows? I've never been to the 50th floor. I'm so anxious. At this moment, the sword tower suddenly shook. What happened? Everyone's expressions changed slightly and they quickly retreated. The sword tower continued to shrink as it trembled. In the end, it turned into a small black tower that hovered in the sky. A speck of light suddenly emerged from the tower. It was Chu Kuangren. It's a success. Chu Kuangren looked at the small tower and smiled in satisfaction. He could now control the sword gauntlet as he pleased. He waved his hand and put the sword tower into his interspatial ring. The crowd could not help but be shocked. Meanwhile, Murong Yu, Ling Huteng, and the other sky prides looked at Chu Kuangren with complicated gazes. The opportunity of fortune of the sword gauntlet was extremely important. At this moment, they could only watch helplessly as this opportunity of fortune fell into Chu Kuangren's hands. How could they be willing? Chu Kuangren, what exactly is the opportunity of fortune inside the sword gauntlet? Ling Huteng couldn't help but ask loudly. Oh, is there a need for me to tell you? Chu Kuangren glanced at him and said indifferently. Chu Kuangren, what kind of trick did you use to pass the 48th floor? Murong Yu could not help but ask. Hearing this, everyone was very curious. If I want to pass, I can pass. What tricks do I need? It's utterly impossible to pass through the 48th level of the sword tower. If you didn't play some tricks, how could you have possibly passed through it? Murong Yu's face was full of disbelief. If you can't pass, then what right do you have to doubt that I can't? A frog at the bottom of a well can only see so much, Chu Kuangren said indifferently. As soon as he said that, Murong Yu and the others were filled with hatred. Chu Kuangren, I haven't settled the score with you for destroying my clone. Let's end it here and now. Ling Huteng's tone was cold as he took a step forward. The sacred sword in his hand suddenly bloomed with an incomparably bright light. Just as well. A few days ago, Murong Feiyu challenged you to a duel. He wanted to spar with you, but you brutally killed him. As the young emperor of the Murong clan, I must avenge this grudge. Murong Yu also unleashed a powerful sword-based Taoist rhyme and locked onto Chu Kuangren, ready to fight him together with Ling Huteng. Shameless. That Murong Feiyu was killed because he tried to sneak up on Lady Lan Yu from behind. He deserved to die. Nangong Huang said coldly. Murong Yu snorted coldly, completely ignoring the truth. He only wanted to deal with Chu Kuangren now. As for Murong Feiyu, it was just an excuse, so he could not care less. Despite the two young emperors joining forces to attack Chu Kuangren did not panic at all. Instead, he looked at Tempest Mountain's Ling Feng, who was not far away, and said, They've already made their move. Can you still hold back? Upon hearing that, Ling Feng said coldly, I don't care about teaming up with others to deal with you. If you want to fight, I'll fight you alone. I advise you to join forces with them. That way, you'll be able to unleash a few more moves and won't lose too badly. You're too arrogant. Ling Feng gritted his teeth. He knew that he was arrogant enough. All these years, he had challenged many strong swordsman cultivators, from the younger generation to the older generation. However, today he met someone even more arrogant than him. Cut the crap. Ling Huteng was the first to attack. He lifted the sacred sword in his hand, and an extremely majestic sword chi soared into the sky, turning into a tornado-like sword chi that slashed out. Murong Yu had also made his move. He was wielding a sword that looked extremely heavy. With a loud roar, he swung his sword horizontally. The black sword ray was like a crescent moon that streaked across the void and slashed towards Chu Kuangren. Two different sword Dao techniques and two different types of sword-based Taoist rhymes attacked Chu Kuangren at the same time. However, Chu Kuangren did not even bother to dodge. He did not even bother to use his sword. All he did was raise his hand and unleash a palm attack. As his fair, jade-like palm descended, a majestic Taoist rhyme erupted from the center of his palm. Earth chi gathered and turned into an ancient godly mountain. The two sword rays shattered at the same time, and the unparalleled impact spread like a hurricane. Murong Yu and Ling Huteng were both forced back. What a terrifying palm strength, Ling Huteng could not help but be shocked. However, at that moment, a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of him. All he saw was a palm enlarging in front of him before it pressed onto his face. Ling Huteng could only feel his body falling backward uncontrollably. Then, his head smashed onto the ground with a loud bang. The intense pain made him feel as if his head was about to explode. To the others, Ling Huteng's head was pressed onto the ground by Chu Kuangren. With a loud bang, the ground caved in, cracks appeared, and blood splattered everywhere. It made Ling Huteng look extremely miserable. I've already said that your clone is weak. How strong can your real body be? Chu Kuangren got up and kicked Ling Huteng, who was like a dead dog, several hundred feet away. Ling Huteng crashed onto a rock wall. Sword rain art. Not far away, Murong Yu let out a roar. His Taoist rhyme circulated, and surges of sword qi were unleashed continuously towards Chu Kuangren. Each sword qi had the power to split a mountain, and when these thousands of sword qi converged, it was like a torrent of sword qi. Chu Kuangren still did not dodge. Instead, he took a step forward, and a mysterious Taoist rhyme filled the air as white lotuses formed around him. Countless sword qi landed on the white lotuses, but it did not even cause the slightest ripple. The Taoist rhyme and spiritual power were all easily disintegrated. Just like that, Chu Kuangren withstood the torrent of sword qi and walked step by step towards Murong Yu. Under Murong Yu's horrified gaze, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and struck out with his palm, sending Murong Yu flying. You're really too weak. So weak that I can't even feel motivated. Chapter 186. Chu Kuangren stood where he was and looked at Ling Huteng and Murong Yu, who were lying on the ground with disappointment in his eyes. Too weak. I can't even muster up the energy to fight you two like this. The other sword cultivators around him gulped in shock when they saw how easily Chu Kuangren suppressed Ling Huteng and Murong Yu. Chu Kuangren's combat strength is too terrifying. Yeah, he's inhuman. Ling Huteng, whose head was bleeding, slowly raised his head and stared at the white-robed figure not far away. His eyes were filled with a strong sense of unwillingness. How can he be so strong? D***. Not far away, Murong Yu, who was sent flying, leaped into the air with bloodshot eyes. Rays of light flowed around his body and condensed into an ancient, mysterious rune that exuded a strong Taoist rhyme. Chu Kuangren's interest was piqued when he saw the rune. A sage boundary sword talisman. Interesting. The so-called runes were simplified forms of the power of heaven and earth by observing the ubiquitous Taoist veins between heaven and earth. There were thousands of runes in the world, each with their own mysteries. Sword talismans were runes related to sword Tao and could enhance a sword cultivator's strength. The higher the grade of the sword talisman, the more power it could enhance. In this world, an exalted talisman was extremely rare, let alone a quasi-saint grade sword talisman. With the help of the sage boundary sword talisman, Murong Yu's sword qi was greatly enhanced and an unparalleled Taoist rhyme erupted. Chu Kuangren, take this. Murong Yu's roar was like thunder as he slashed with the sacred sword in his hand. Thousands of sword qi swept out and intertwined to form a terrifying giant python that could devour the heavens and earth. It let out an ear-piercing roar as it charged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren slowly raised his hand against the attack. The 5 supreme foundation levels in his body shone brightly and his spiritual power surged like a tsunami. He did not draw his sword but instead struck out with his palm. The majestic power of the godly mountain erupted in an instant, and the giant python that was formed from intertwining sword qi was easily shattered. The impact from the collision between the sword qi and palm energy spread. Murong Yu was the first to be hit, and he was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Even after using a boundary sage-grade rune, he was still no match for Chu Kuangren. He still did not have the right to make Chu Kuangren draw his sword. The 2 young emperors of swordsmanship had been utterly defeated. Then Chu Kuangren looked at Tempest Mountain's Ling Feng. This young emperor of the sword Tao, who was known as the lunatic swordsman by others and was extremely obsessed with swords, was frozen on the spot. He stared at Chu Kuangren with trembling eyes. It was too terrifying. Even he would not be able to defeat Murongyu and Ling Huteng as easily as Chu Kuangren. Moreover, his opponent did not even draw his sword. He did not use his full strength at all. Without a doubt, his opponent was much stronger than him. As I said, if you attack together with them, you can attack a few more times. Now, I think you only have one chance. Let me see the ultimate sword art of Tempest Mountain, Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Ling Feng clenched the sword in his hand tightly. His body trembled slightly, but he did not draw his sword. He was actually afraid. I told you to draw your sword. Chu Kuangren shouted coldly as if he was scolding a child. As he said that, the sword-based Taoist rhyme emanated from his body and surged out like a tsunami, crushing Ling Feng in a frenzy. Under the lock of this sword-based Taoist rhyme, Ling Feng could not even move his finger, let alone draw his sword. No, this is impossible. I'm the Tempest Mountain's pride. How can I not even draw my sword in front of him? At least, I can draw my sword. With that thought in mind, Ling Feng gritted his teeth and slowly pulled out the long sword in his hand. He raised it high and a surge of sword-based Taoist rhyme emanated from it. The sword chi swirled and formed an illusory sword shadow above his head. Under the suppression of Chu Kuangren's Taoist rhyme, Ling Feng's sword shadow trembled continuously as if it would collapse at any moment. Very well, draw your sword, Chu Kuangren said calmly, but his sword-based Taoist rhyme continued to strengthen. When Ling Feng felt the even more terrifying Taoist rhyme, he let out a frenzied roar. However, the sword shadow above his head did not descend. Everyone was terrified when they saw that. To be able to force lunatic swordsmen to such a state, what kind of terrifying pressure was that? Draw your sword, draw your sword. Ling Feng roared in his heart. However, under the suppression of Chu Kuangren's Taoist rhyme, both his hand and his sword were trembling. It was even harder for the sword shadow to descend. Sigh, in the end, you still can't break through your limits. The so-called lunatic swordsman is only this much. Chu Kuangren shook his head. The violent sword-based Taoist rhyme erupted once again. Under the impact of this Taoist rhyme, the illusory sword shadow was completely shattered. Finally, Ling Feng could not hold on any longer and collapsed onto the ground. In the end, he could not even draw his sword. I've lost. Lunatic swordsman slumped onto the ground with a dejected look on his face. He felt a huge sense of defeat. When the surrounding sword cultivators saw that, they felt that the scene before them was too unbelievable. The mighty lunatic swordsman was suppressed to the point where he could not even draw his sword. Isn't this a little too frightening? Lunatic swordsman's strength is definitely stronger than Murongyu and Ling Huteng, yet he's being suppressed to the point where he can't even draw his sword. It seems that Chu Kuangren did not use his full strength when he fought against Murongyu and Ling Huteng. I even suspect that he did not use half of his strength. Oh my god, this Chu Kuangren is just too abnormal. He's a monster. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Ling Huteng propped himself up and roared in a frenzy. He channeled his spiritual power and wanted to fight again. However, at that moment, a vast domineering aura descended from the sky. Apart from Chu Kuangren, all the sword cultivators at the scene were suppressed. Those with weaker cultivations were immediately sprawled on the ground, unable to move. That was the sage aura. In the sky, 4 figures appeared. They were the sages of the one mountain, one sect, and 2 families. However, 3 of them did not look at Chu Kuangren in a friendly manner. After all, their sky prides had been dealt a terrible blow by Chu Kuangren. Their Taoist core might even be affected when they returned. What's wrong? Are you guys planning to attack a junior? At that moment, Black Heaven's 3rd forefather said. The other 3 sages retracted their gazes. They knew that this was a battle between sky prides. If they were to attack, the nature of the battle would change completely, and it might even trigger a war between orthodoxies. However, watching Chu Kuangren grow stronger and stronger before their eyes, especially when he was a member of the Black Heaven sect, made them feel bad. Let's stop, the Tempest Mountain's sage said. He then looked at Chu Kuangren and asked, Young friend, may I ask what kind of opportunities of fortune are inside the sword gauntlet? Not only him, but the other sages were also very curious. The opportunities of fortune inside the sword gauntlet had been hidden for so long that no one knew about it for countless years. Now that someone had finally obtained this opportunities of fortune, the sages were still itching to get their hands on it. Kuangren, you don't have to say it. As long as I'm here, no one can force you. At that moment, Black Heaven's third forefather said to Chu Kuangren. Yes, third forefather. Chu Kuangren nodded. Brother third Taoist, don't you think that's a little unkind of you? We're just asking, it's not like we're trying to steal it. Is there a need to hide it from us? Third forefather Linghu frowned and said, It's up to us whether to tell you or not. So what? Are you going to force us if we don't tell you? Black Heaven's third forefather said indifferently. You, third forefather Linghu gritted his teeth in anger, but there was nothing he could do. Chapter 187. The opportunity of fortune of the sword gauntlet was taken by Chu Kuangren, but the rest of the sword cultivators were devastated. Some of them even lost interest in practicing their swordsmanship. It was too tragic. Compared to Chu Kuangren, what was the point of practicing their swordsmanship? Other than a few people who stayed in the hidden sword canyon to observe the sword scars, most of the sword cultivators, including the One Mountain and Two Clans, had left. Boss Qian, we'll meet again. Brother Chu, have a safe journey. Qian Fugui laughed. He had been in contact with Chu Kuangren for the past few days. Although they were not exactly friends, they were at least on good terms. Looking at Chu Kuangren's departing figure, Qian Fugui smiled. This trip to the hidden sword canyon was really worth it. A green figure appeared behind Qian Fugui. Boss, you've been in contact with Chu Kuangren for the past few days. Are you trying to befriend him? Duh. Then why didn't you just reveal your identity? Why don't you understand? It's important to be honest when making friends. The green figure rolled his eyes. Boss, why are you befriending him? You know very well that you're just interested in his identity and potential, right? You still have the nerve to talk about being honest? That's too fake. Shut up. I'm your boss, how dare you talk back to me? As if boss is right. The green figure had no choice but to follow Qian Fugui's lead. Qian Fugui looked at Chu Kuangren's departing figure and rubbed the white jade ring on his thumb. There are too many investment opportunities in this era of great battles, and Chu Kuangren is definitely worth investing in. It won't go wrong to build a good relationship with him. What? An emperor's scripture? On the ferry boat, Black Heaven's third forefather could not help but exclaim when he heard that the opportunity of fortune in the sword gauntlet was an emperor's inheritance. An emperor's scripture was too valuable. Even a sage would be jealous of it. Luckily you didn't say it out loud. Otherwise, who knows if those three old men would start a war just to get it. An emperor's scripture is too scary. Black Heaven's third forefather said in relief. Kuangren, you have a lot of luck, but the emperor's scripture is too important. You mustn't tell anyone else. Otherwise, even the Black Heaven sect will not be able to protect you. Black Heaven's third forefather said solemnly. Chu Kuangren's heart skipped a beat. After all, he had the backing of 3 sage orthodoxies. If even they could not protect Chu Kuangren, he would not be able to do so. In that case, what kind of power would they be facing? Kuangren, this world is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Sage orthodoxies are not necessarily the strongest forces. There are many unknowns and unknowns in this world. Black Heaven's third forefather said meaningfully. Unknown things, unknown lands. Chu Kuangren murmured before he nodded. I understand. Study the imperial scripture well and strive to become an emperor in the future. Only then will you not be afraid of anyone or anything. Yes, third patriarch. Soon, everyone returned to the Black Heaven sect. When Honorable Xianxia found out that Chu Kuangren had obtained the opportunity of fortune from the sword gauntlet, he was extremely pleased. I knew you could do it, Kuangren. Other than Kuangren, no one else can take the sword tower's fortuitous encounter. Elder Ruyan said with a smile. That's right, what is that opportunity? One of the elders asked curiously. At that moment, Black Heaven's third forefather's voice came from the void. No one is allowed to ask about the opportunity of fortune in the sword gauntlet. Everyone looked at each other, and then revealed a look of contemplation. Chu Kuangren smiled apologetically at the crowd. Let disciple, don't overthink it. Since the sage has spoken, we will obey. We will not ask about the opportunity of fortune anymore. Not bad. The opportunity of fortune is precious. It would be bad if it attracted the attention of others. The fewer people who know about it, the better. The few elders expressed their understanding. All right, Kuangren, the trip to the sword gauntlet has been tough. Go back and rest. You still have to attend the inauguration ceremony in half a month. Yes, what? Just as Chu Kuangren was about to leave, he suddenly regained his senses and asked, what inauguration ceremony? Of course it's the inauguration ceremony where you take over the position of sect leader. Chu Kuangren only remembered when he heard that. Honorable teacher, are you really not going to reconsider? Look at all the elders here, which one of them isn't more suitable than me? Can't you just pick one of them? Hey, lead disciple, you can't just say things like that. Besides you, who else is qualified to take over the position of sect leader? Yes, it has to be you. Kuangren, just accept it. The few elders laughed. Surprisingly, none of them objected. Chu Kuangren wanted to cry but no tears came out. Do you guys think so highly of me? Kuangren, look, all the elders have unanimously agreed that the position of sect leader belongs to you. You have to accept it. I'm already a boundary sage now, so I need to hide behind the scenes and accumulate the resources to become a sage. Honorable Xianxia patted Chu Kuangren on the shoulder. You don't have to worry about it affecting your cultivation. There are a few elders who will help you with the management. You just need to make some decisions on the bigger issues. Other times, you can just be a sect leader who doesn't have to do anything. Back in the day, that's how I went through it. As Honorable Xianxia spoke of his experience, the mouths of the few elders beside him twitched. They wanted to slap him in the face. Damn it, you're so comfortable being a sect leader who doesn't have to do anything. We were all exhausted to the point of exhaustion. All right, honorable teacher, I understand. Chu Kuangren saw that the faces of the few elders, including the beautiful elder Rian, had turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He quickly interrupted Honorable Xianxia, who was still bragging. If he was one step late, he was afraid that this honorable teacher of his would be beaten to death. It's good that you've thought it through. Being a sect leader is actually quite easy. Honorable Xianxia smiled in satisfaction and continued to tease the nerves of the few elders. Kuangren, you should go back first. We need to discuss some matters regarding the inauguration ceremony with your honorable teacher. Elder Ruyan smiled gently. Yes. Chu Kuangren felt his scalp tingle. He gave Honorable Xianxia a look of good luck before bowing and retreating. When he left, Chu Kuangren considerately closed the palace door. Then he heard some screams coming from inside. Didn't we already agree on the inauguration ceremony? Fourth elder, what's wrong with you? Why did you hit me? CK me, what are you guys doing? You're a sect leader who doesn't have to do anything, right? You're speaking from experience, right? You bastard Xianxia, do you know how much white hair I've gotten from overseeing the Internal Affairs Division all these years? You're quite happy, aren't you? Hit him. Hey, stop. Elder Ruyan, I was wrong, don't pinch me. Hiss. Kuangren, save me. Outside the palace door, Chu Kuangren shuddered and bowed towards the palace door. Honorable teacher, please forgive me for being unfilial. I can't help you anymore. He sighed and quickly turned around to leave. Back at the Taoist palace, Lan Yu and Lil Bing were looking at a piece of clothing. Hey, what are you guys looking at? Master, you're back. These are the clothes that the Internal Affairs Division just sent over. They're for you to wear during the inauguration ceremony. Lil Bing walked forward with the clothes in her arms. Chu Kuangren glanced at them. Wow, the materials used for the clothes were all high-end goods. These clothes alone were worth at least 1 million soul stones. Chapter 188. There was still half a month before the inauguration ceremony. As a sage orthodoxy's inauguration ceremony, it would not be too shabby. According to tradition, Honorable Xianxia had sent out many invitations to the various sage orthodoxies to attend the ceremony. The news that Chu Kuangren was about to take over the Black Heaven sect leader position had spread throughout the firmament star. Everyone from the major forces was shocked. What kind of joke was this? How old was Chu Kuangren now? How could he take over the Black Heaven sect? That was insane. Was he strong enough? Was he prestigious enough? Was he experienced enough? However, when they thought about it, they realized that Chu Kuangren's strength was enough to kill an honorable supreme. His prestige was so high that his name was known throughout the world. As for experience, there were plenty of people in the Black Heaven sect who were experienced. *CK. Everyone realized that Chu Kuangren was indeed qualified to lead the Black Heaven sect. All of a sudden, everyone from the sage orthodoxies was dumbfounded. This was especially true for the Sky Prides, who had mixed feelings. While they were still fighting, Chu Kuangren was about to become the sect leader of a sage orthodoxy. His status was much higher than theirs. How old is he? I think he's not even 20. *CK me, a 20-year-old sage orthodoxy sect leader? I don't think there are many like that in the past and present. I have a feeling that under Chu Kuangren's leadership, the Black Heaven sect is about to enter a new era. Honorable Xianxia and the others are really daring to hand over an entire orthodoxy to a young man who's not even 20 years old. How bold. This Chu Kuangren is really something. The outside world was in an uproar because of the news that Chu Kuangren was about to take over the Black Heaven sect leader position. However, Chu Kuangren did not care about any of that at all. He was currently studying the Emperor Scripture. The mindful Emperor Scripture that he obtained from the sword gauntlet. This was the second Emperor Scripture that he had studied. With the experience of studying the longevity Emperor Scripture, he was more familiar with it. He did not have to worry about accidentally getting lost in it and going into closed-door meditation for a few years. He realized that compared to the longevity Emperor Scripture, the mindful Emperor Scripture was slightly less profound. Emperors were divided into strong and weak ones, and, naturally, Emperor Scriptures were also divided into different grades. Although it was not as good as the Eternal Emperor Scripture, the Mindful Emperor Scripture was still an Emperor Scripture, and it would be of great help to Chu Kuangren. As the two Emperor Scriptures verified each other, Chu Kuangren's Dao technique realm improved a little, and the results were gratifying. What surprised Chu Kuangren even more was that there was an Emperor technique recorded in the Mindful Emperor Scripture that would be of great help to his current sword Dao. Sword Qi Transformation. This technique can condense the sword Qi into doppelgangers to attack. When mastered, the sword Qi can be split into millions. One person can be an army. Chu Kuangren looked at the Emperor technique recorded in the Mindful Emperor Scripture. He yearned for this Emperor technique so much that he could not wait to master it. In fact, there was also an Emperor technique in the Eternal Emperor Scripture. However, that Emperor technique was a recovery-type Emperor technique. It was not very useful to Chu Kuangren, who had an immortal body, so he did not delve too deeply into it. However, the Sword Qi Transformation technique was different. To Chu Kuangren, who was an expert in Sword Dao, it would be a great help. Through this Emperor technique, Chu Kuangren could even improve his heaven-slaying sword drawing technique further. Chu Kuangren began to comprehend the Sword Qi Transformation technique. Time flew, and 10 days passed. There were still 3 days before the inauguration ceremony. Today was the day. Chu Kuangren suddenly felt a vibration in his yin and yang ring. He came out of his Emperor technique enlightenment state and probed it with his senses. It's this little guy. Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. The vibration in his yin and yang ring came from the godly phoenix egg. The godly phoenix egg had absorbed countless treasures during this period of time. Some of them were from others, and some were from the gacha roulette. Today, it was finally going to hatch. Why did you have to do it now? You sure know how to pick the right time. Chu Kuangren shook his head helplessly. However, the egg's head was already out. He could not possibly stuff it back in, could he? There are still 3 days left. I should be able to make it in time, Chu Kuangren said. Then, he stood up and turned into a ray of light. Where are you going, master? I don't know. Lil Bing and Lan Yu looked at each other, puzzled. Chu Kuangren did not bring anyone with him. He turned into a ray of light and flew into the distance. He wanted to find a suitable place for the godly phoenix egg to hatch. Soon, Chu Kuangren arrived at the mouth of a volcano. There was a large amount of lava in the mouth of the volcano, and an extremely rich fire-based Taoist rhyme permeated the air. He took out the godly phoenix egg and hesitated. Will it burn the egg if I just throw it in? The godly phoenix egg vibrated gently, revealing an extremely joyful emotion. It seemed to be very satisfied with the place. If that's the case, I'll do it here. Chu Kuangren no longer hesitated and immediately threw the godly phoenix egg into the mouth of the volcano. All he needed to do now was to wait. Another 2 days passed. Chu Kuangren noticed that the fire-based Taoist rhyme in the volcano was getting thinner as if it had been absorbed by the godly phoenix egg. This little guy's appetite is too big. Chu Kuangren murmured. Apart from that, he also sensed an extremely mysterious and vigorous Taoist rhyme that was gradually spreading out in the air. It was the godly phoenix's Taoist rhyme. The Taoist rhyme was so strong that it even attracted many beasts nearby, hoping to devour the godly phoenix and evolve. Hiss! A giant python crawled over from afar. Its lantern-sized eyes stared intently at the mouth of the volcano. Its instincts told it that there was a great opportunity of fortune inside. As long as it could obtain it, it would transform into a dragon today. At that thought, the giant python was so excited that its scales were trembling. However, when it arrived at the mouth of the volcano, it saw a person. A white-robed young man was sitting cross-legged at the mouth of the volcano. The flying volcanic ash around him did not touch the young man at all. Danger! The giant python felt the sense of danger from this young man. It was not just the giant python. Some other beasts were also heading towards the mouth of the volcano. Those who dared to covet the godly phoenix were all extremely powerful beings. Not only did they have a noble bloodline, but the weakest among them had a cultivation base of at least the honorable realm. Now, these beasts had gathered together and were all staring at the mouth of the volcano, their eyes filled with desire. However, with Chu Kuangren around, they dared not act rashly. If this goes on, the being in the mouth of the volcano will come out soon. When that happens, we won't have a chance anymore. A giant ape with red fur all over its body said in a deep voice. I don't care anymore. I can't hold it in anymore. That volcano definitely has the aura of some kind of ancient remnant. If I devour it, my bloodline will definitely evolve. The giant python could not hold it in anymore. With a look of desire in its eyes, the giant python crawled towards the mouth of the volcano. I can't take it anymore. I want to go too. There's only one human. There's nothing to be afraid of. How can we miss such a great opportunity of fortune? One by one, the beasts began to move. Even though they knew that Chu Kuangren was not as simple as he seemed, they still could not hold back the Taoist rhyme from the godly phoenix's egg. It was a desire for a higher level of life. They wanted to evolve. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren, who had been sitting at the mouth of the volcano, noticed the movements of the beasts and slowly stood up as well. A terrifying Taoist rhyme erupted from that seemingly frail body of his. It was as if the entire world was about to collapse and shatter. Chapter 189. If all of you had stayed put, I wouldn't have bothered with you. But if you want to touch my offspring now, you're asking for it. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. Next to him, the descendant's self-sword that had been stuck in the ground all this while trembled slightly before a sword ray shot out and slashed at one of the beasts. Without any suspense, the demonic beast was unable to resist this sword light and was directly torn in half. Go! Don't be afraid, he's alone. Once we devour that ancient remnant beast, we'll be able to evolve. Now, we just need to get rid of this obstacle. Kill! None of the beasts were willing to give up on the godly phoenix egg. The giant python was the first to rush out. It opened its mouth wide, and its throat began to emit a blazing light before it spat out a stream of boiling lava. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and unleashed a palm attack. With a loud boom, an unparalleled majestic Taoist rhyme turned into a godly mountain and crushed it. The boiling lava was dispersed, and the power of the godly mountain directly smashed onto the giant python's head, almost smashing half of its head into pieces. Go to hell. The giant ape leaped high into the air, clenched its fist, and smashed towards Chu Kuangren like a meteor. Ignorant. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. With a casual slap, the horrifying giant ape was sent flying thousands of meters away and crashed into a forest. However, despite his unparalleled combat strength, the beasts had long been mesmerized by the godly phoenix egg's aura. Their eyes were bloodshot, and they fearlessly charged towards Chu Kuangren. Just in time, let's try this sword chi transformation technique. Chu Kuangren murmured. A powerful surge of Taoist rhyme erupted from his body, and a large amount of sword chi seeped out of his body before intertwining in the air to form a human figure. This person looked exactly like Chu Kuangren. All the beasts were dumbfounded. What kind of technique was this? However, what happened next shocked them even more. The sword chi on Chu Kuangren's body flowed and turned into 2, then 4. Including the real Chu Kuangren, there were a total of 5. Each of them had a terrifying sword-based Taoist rhyme, so the beasts could not tell which one was the real Chu Kuangren. Destroy these beasts, Chu Kuangren's real body said. 4 sword chi clones rushed out from 4 different directions, holding swords condensed from sword chi in their hands. Wherever they went, sword chi danced, tearing apart demonic beasts one after another, turning them into souls of the dead. Chu Kuangren walked to the side of a large rock, patted the dust off it, and sat down. Then he rested his chin on his hand as he watched the massacre unfold before him. The strength of the sword chi clone is determined by the strength of the sword chi. With my current mastery of the sword chi transformation technique, I can create a clone with 80% of my strength. And the more there are, the more scattered the sword chi will be, and the weaker the power of the clones will be. 4 sword chi clones, each with half of my strength, should be enough to deal with these demonic beasts. Chu Kuangren nodded in satisfaction at his clone's performance. The Mindful Emperor's sword chi transformation technique was extremely terrifying. If Chu Kuangren could master it to its peak, he could even create a sword chi clone with the same power level as him. Apart from that, the sword chi doppelganger could also take on various forms. For example, it could transform into a demonic beast or any other person. Otherwise, it would not be called the sword chi transformation technique. The faceless swordsmen and the sword chi beasts that Chu Kuangren encountered in the sword gauntlet were also created with reference to the sword chi transformation technique. Roar. With a roar, a demonic beast covered in pitch-black scales that looked like a ferocious tiger pounced on one of the sword chi clones. The sword chi clone unleashed a slash, and the piercing sword chi blasted the beast away. However, it was unable to kill the ferocious tiger beast. The scales on my body are extremely tough. Your sword chi can't hurt me at all. The ferocious tiger beast roared at the sword chi clone. However, the clone did not have any emotions, and there was no change in its expression. Not far away, Chu Kuangren saw this scene and rubbed his chin as if he was thinking about something. Then, he took out the sacred emerald sword case. He tapped on the sword case, and it slowly opened. A pitch-black long sword suddenly flew out, piercing through the demonic beast horde and arriving in front of the sword chi clone. It was the Troopbreaker ominous sword. The sword chi clone grabbed the Troopbreaker ominous sword and infused it with sword chi. An extremely ferocious aura emanated from it, and its combat strength increased. What? The ferocious tiger beast's eyes widened. Not only can it create clones, but it can also use weapons? Moreover, one could tell that the weapon was extremely powerful. This is clearly a shameless act. However, the sword chi clone did not think too much about it. After obtaining the Troopbreaker ominous sword, it attacked again. This time, with the Troopbreaker ominous sword in hand, the ferocious tiger beast's scales were no longer a hindrance, and it was easily torn apart. In just a few moves, the ferocious tiger beast was easily slain. Not far away, Chu Kuangren tapped on the sword case a few more times, and another 3 treasured swords flew out, which were then caught by the other 3 sword chi clones. Every treasured sword in the sword case was a weapon that countless sword cultivators dreamed of owning. Now that they were wielded by the sword chi clones, the terrifying sword chi was unleashed to the fullest, and the efficiency of killing the beasts was even higher. This sacred emerald sword case and the sword chi clones are a perfect match. Chu Kuangren thought to himself. If he had enough treasured swords in the future, he could create hundreds of sword chi clones, each wielding a sacred sword or a supreme sword. How spectacular would that scene be? This was no joke. If Chu Kuangren wanted swords, he did not need to go to Swordplay City to find someone to forge them. There was a huge pile of swords on the Black Heaven Sect's Sword Mountain. The 4 sword chi clones and the 4 treasured swords were like 4 unstoppable killing gods, and the beasts were harvested like weeds. Not long after, the ground was filled with the corpses of countless beasts. The air was filled with the pungent smell of blood, and violent energy turbulence was everywhere. The scene was a mess. Seeing this, Chu Kuangren raised his hand and activated the gluttonous devouring technique, absorbing all the beasts into the avarice dimension and refining them into pure spiritual power. The flesh and blood essence of these beasts were comparable to a few honorable supremes, and it was enough to increase Chu Kuangren's cultivation level. At that moment, the entire volcano suddenly shook. A terrifying Taoist rhyme emanated from within the volcano, and the surviving beasts seemed to have felt something as their eyes became filled with fear. An ancient aura that came from their bloodline made them involuntarily kneel on the ground, and their bodies trembled. Ugh! A piercing cry came from within the volcano, piercing through the clouds. Then, a blood-red godly phoenix rushed out of the volcano along with waves of rays of light and soared into the sky. Waves of Taoist rhyme filled the air, shaking the heavens and earth. The head of a chicken, the jaw of a swallow, the neck of a snake, the back of a turtle, the tail of a fish, it was the image of the legendary phoenix. As the godly phoenix soared in the sky, all the flying beasts in the firmament star sensed it and unconsciously let out a long cry in the direction of the godly phoenix, as if they were congratulating the birth of the divine beast. At that moment, all birds were paying homage to the godly phoenix. At that moment, the heavens and earth were celebrating. Chu Kuangren looked at the godly phoenix and could not help but sigh. This little guy has finally hatched. Besides, TSK, as expected of a divine beast, this display is different. Chapter 190. When the godly phoenix appeared, all living beings in the world could sense it. In an instant, the entire firmament star was shaken. After all, it was a divine beast. One had to know that divine beasts like dragons and divine phoenixes only existed in legends. Every single one of them was incomparably precious. Even in ancient times, they were extremely rare. As long as a divine beast did not die, it would at least become an emperor in the future. If one could tame it, it would be a great help to a cultivator. At that moment, many great ones were searching for divine beasts, especially those who were good at divination techniques. They wanted to deduce the godly phoenix's location. On a certain mountain peak, the divine predictor, who was dressed in plain clothes, was deducing the godly phoenix's location. His Taoist rhymes circulated, and a mysterious power of divination appeared. In his hand was a bronze mirror. The mirror was shrouded in clouds and mist, and it contained a powerful power of divination. After a long time, the clouds in the mirror still did not dissipate. The divine predictor shook his head. Divine beasts are blessed by the heavens and earth, and their fate is even more noble than the emperors of old. It's difficult to deduce. If even he was like that, it was needless to say for the others. All the great ones who wanted to deduce the godly phoenix's location had failed. On top of the volcano, the immortal godly phoenix appeared and soared in the sky. Her gorgeous and beautiful figure exuded waves of extraordinary Taoist rhymes. Finally, the godly phoenix landed in front of Chu Kuangren and rubbed her furry head against him, expressing her joy and intimacy. Chu Kuangren patted her head and activated his eye of revelation to check the godly phoenix's information before him. The immortal godly phoenix is the ruler of the phoenix tribe. It has an honorable cultivation level and possesses the divine abilities, the essence of myriad flames, and the nirvana flames. According to the information provided by the Eye of Revelation, Chu Kuangren could not help but sigh. As expected of a godly phoenix, its cultivation level was already an honorable the moment it was born. This child that I hatched has a higher cultivation level than me? At that thought, Chu Kuangren sweated. It really is the godly phoenix. At that moment, a surprised voice came from the distant sky. An old man in Taoist robes came flying from afar. This old man had a horse-like face and deep eye sockets, giving off an eerie vibe. The old man was overjoyed when he saw the divine phoenix. I never thought that I would encounter such a great opportunity on this trip. If I can subdue this divine phoenix, I will be able to do as I please in the firmament dome. This old man had been nearby and immediately rushed over when he sensed the birth of the divine phoenix. He could tell that this godly phoenix had just been born and its cultivation was only at the honorable realm. It was a far cry from a quasi-sage like him. The chances of him subduing this divine phoenix were very high. However, he soon noticed Chu Kuangren beside him. He could not help but be surprised when he saw Chu Kuangren's otherworldly appearance and temperament. When he saw how close the divine phoenix was to him, his heart skipped a beat. Could the divine phoenix have already been subdued? Thinking of this, his eyes burst out a wisp of killing intent. The divine phoenix had to be his. Young friend, may I know which orthodoxy you're from? The old man in Taoist robes slowly approached Chu Kuangren with a smile on his face. However, his appearance was not flattering at all. Even when he was smiling, he gave off a gloomy feeling. Chu Kuangren activated his Eye of Revelation and looked at the old man in front of him. Master Taoist Withered Cloud, one of the protectors of the sacred palace of death. His cultivation level is at the boundary sage realm, and he cultivates the sage techniques, Withered Shadow Seal, Great Earth Mountain Scorched Palm, a protector of the sacred palace of death. This sacred palace of death again. Chu Kuangren was a little surprised. The Blacklight Sage that he had killed in the Luminous Moon Sage's secret realm was also a protector of this sacred palace. What kind of force is this? Chu Kuangren had only met two people. One was a sage and the other was a boundary sage. This kind of background is just too terrifying. Even a sage orthodoxy would not be able to match up to them. That orthodoxy is not important. What's important is that you don't come near me anymore, Master Taoist. Looking at your face makes me a little nervous. Don't be afraid, young friend. I may look scary, but I'm definitely a good person. Master Taoist Withered Cloud smiled. At the same time, a gray chi was condensing on his hand that was facing away from Chu Kuangren. A fierce look flashed across his eyes, and he suddenly attacked. However, someone was faster than him. Behind him, for sword rays were flying towards him from 4 different directions. What? Master Taoist Withered Cloud was a little surprised. His palm attack that was originally aimed at Chu Kuangren was now aimed at the incoming sword rays. When the sword rays collided with the palm energy, a terrifying force swept out, and the 4 sword chi clones could not help but be pushed back a few hundred meters. Chu Kuangren seized the opportunity to raise his sword and unleash a slash. A majestic sword-based Taoist rhyme locked onto Master Taoist Withered Cloud, and the sword slashed onto his back. A terrifying sword chi erupted, and even a boundary sage's body was almost torn in half by that attack. With a scream, Master Taoist Withered Cloud was sent flying. When the godly phoenix saw that, she did not need Chu Kuangren's order. Instead, she opened her mouth and spat out a ball of golden flames at Master Taoist Withered Cloud. The flames were so hot that even light was distorted wherever they passed. D****. Master Taoist Withered Cloud was a boundary sage after all. With a loud roar, a gray chi of death erupted and collided with the flames. He landed on the ground. His entire body was almost cut in half by Chu Kuangren's sword attack, and wisps of gray chi escaped from his body. Master Taoist Withered Cloud took out a life-saving pill that he had kept for many years and swallowed it, which temporarily stopped his injuries from worsening. Kid, I'm going to skin you alive. Master Taoist Withered Cloud roared. He no longer pretended to be courteous. At the same time, he was also very shocked. After all, he had transcended the heavenly tribulation and ascended to a boundary sage. Coupled with the nourishment of the death chi, his body had long transformed. Even if he stood still, an ordinary honorable's attack would not be able to hurt him. Yet, he was severely injured by Chu Kuangren's sword attack. If he did not have the life-saving pill, he might even die. Where did this terrifying sky pride come from? If you want to skin me alive, why don't you try? A hint of disgust flashed across Chu Kuangren's eyes when he saw the chi of death that was seeping out from his opponent's body. He did not like that aura at all. The four sword chi clones charged towards Master Taoist Withered Cloud. When they channeled their sword chi, it was as if four honorables were joining forces. Master Taoist Withered Cloud was shocked. These are clones? Why are there so many of them? What kind of technique is this? Cloning techniques were extremely rare, let alone so many at once. Master Taoist Withered Cloud had never heard of it before. Get out of my way. Master Taoist Withered Cloud was a boundary sage after all. Even if he was severely injured by Chu Kuangren's sword attack, his combat strength was still extremely terrifying. He unleashed a palm attack, and the chi of death surged out like a tidal wave. The four sword chi clones instantly crumbled under such power. The four long swords fell to the ground with a clang. B** die. Master Taoist Withered Cloud channeled the chi of death in his body and unleashed a palm attack. A black flame burned and emanated an eerie and domineering Taoist rhyme. Chu Kuangren then slapped the sword case in front of him, and 8 long swords flew out from it. They carried a mysterious Taoist rhyme and majestic sword chi that forced Master Taoist rhyme to retreat. The 4 long swords that fell to the ground also rose into the air and resonated with the other long swords, forming a shocking sword formation. Today, I'll use a boundary sage like you to test out the power of the 4-season sword formation, Chu Kuangren said indifferently while holding the sword case in one hand. Chapter 191. The 12 swords hovered in the air, forming a shocking sword formation. Waves of mysterious Taoist rhymes descended from the sky, enveloping an area of a few miles and trapping Taoist Withered Cloud. The second stage of the 4-season sword formation, the 12-moon sword formation. This is a sword formation. Brat, I didn't expect you to have so many tricks up your sleeves. But, you're just a combat king warrior. Even if you have a sword formation, what can you possibly do to me? Break! Taoist Withered Cloud growled. Then, he raised his hand and a gloomy and overbearing Taoist rhyme erupted. Black flames surged in all directions. However, the Taoist rhymes of the sword array circulated, and a piercingly cold sword chi whizzed out like a cold wind in the cold winter. Under this sword chi, the black flames were continuously disintegrating. Playing with fire, huh? Chu Kuangren chuckled. The Taoist rhyme in the sword formation changed, and a huge sun suddenly rose up. As the light shone, rays of sword chi intertwined to form a sea of fire that surged out, burning Old Man Ku Yun's face. What sword array is this? It's actually so powerful. Old Man Ku Yun was frightened. He had seen his fair share of formations, but he had never seen a sword formation controlled by a battle king warrior force him to such a degree. Just like the doppelganger technique, this sword formation shocked him. All of these abilities were beyond his comprehension. How could a combat king possess such abilities? Who exactly are you? Elder Ku Yun stared at Chu Kuangren outside the sword formation and questioned him loudly. His eyes were filled with hatred and confusion. Take a guess. Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a thought, Taoist rhymes circulated in the sword array. Countless sword chi interweaved to form the scene of the 4 seasons, which kept blasting at Old Man Ku Yun. Sometimes, it was like the spring rain, soundless and impossible to guard against. Sometimes, it was like the explosion of spring thunder, peerlessly tyrannical. Sometimes, it was like the scorching heat, raging flames burning the sky. Sometimes, it was like the bleak autumn wind, and the sword chi contained a sense of melancholy. Sometimes, it was as cold and ruthless as the cold wind, the 4 seasons changed, and the scenery of nature was contained within this season. Even though Taoist Withered Cloud was a quasi-saint, he was still in a sorry state under the continuous attacks of the sword array, and his injuries were worsening. I will die? I will die at the hands of a battle king? Taoist Withered Cloud was terrified at the thought of this. He stared at Chu Kuangren, not expecting a young battle monarch to possess the combat strength to kill a boundary sage. This was simply inconceivable. Who is this person? Master Taoist Withered Cloud stared at the peerless white-robed Chu Kuangren. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. You're Chu Kuangren. Oh, you guessed it. You're not too stupid. Chu Kuangren chuckled. I should have guessed it a long time ago. With such combat strength, proficiency in swordsmanship, extraordinary looks, and that sword you have on you that looks like white jade and has an extraordinary aura, you must be Chu Kuangren. Taoist Withered Cloud gnashed his teeth and said, Now that you've figured it out, you may die in peace, Chu Kuangren said calmly. With a single thought, the sword formation's transformations reached its peak. A surge of sword-based Taoist rhyme circulated and formed a colorful sword shadow within the sword formation. It contained the power of the 4 seasons and nature itself, and it slashed down on Master Taoist Withered Cloud. Under this attack, Master Taoist Withered Cloud, who was already riddled with injuries, could not resist at all. All he could do was let out a cry of agony before his entire body was torn apart by the sword chi and shattered into pieces. Even a boundary sage's body could not withstand such an unparalleled power. Return. Chu Kuangren patted the sword case, and the 12 treasured swords returned to him. The power of the 4-season sword formation was stronger than he had imagined, and this was only the second stage. There were still the 24 solar terms and 365 days. How powerful would it be once it was completed? He walked to Master Taoist Withered Cloud's corpse and picked up the yin and yang ring on the ground. After sensing it for a while, he tossed it into the yin and yang ring. What kind of force is the sacred palace of death? Why have I never heard of it in the Azure Dragon domain? Chu Kuangren murmured. Then, he remembered what Black Heaven's third forefather had told him a few days ago. Unknown things, unknown lands. Could this sacred palace of death be one of those unknown lands? Since it was an unknown land, ordinary cultivators would not know about it, so it was only natural that he had not heard of it before. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and used the gluttonous devouring technique to refine the corpse. He would not let go of the corpse even if it was dead. Even turning one's bones into ashes would not be as ruthless as him. The immortal godly phoenix came to Chu Kuangren's side and suddenly said, Mother, you're so powerful. What did you call me? The immortal godly phoenix tilted her head. Mother. Her voice was like a 7- or 8-year-old girl's. It sounded crisp and sweet, but Chu Kuangren was speechless. Don't call me mother. Ah, mother, do you not want me anymore? The immortal godly phoenix sounded like she was about to cry. In her inherited memories, the one who hatched her was her mother. Since Chu Kuangren hatched her, who else could it be but her mother? It's not that I don't want you anymore, but you can't call me mother. Call me brother. Yes, just call me brother, Chu Kuangren said. Brother? Yes. All right then, brother mother. Call me brother, don't call me mother. After some persuasion, Chu Kuangren finally corrected the immortal godly phoenix's way of addressing him. All right, let's go back to the Black Heaven sect. Where's the Black Heaven sect? Just follow me. Suddenly, Chu Kuangren looked at the godly phoenix with a hint of hope in his eyes. Godly phoenix, can we make a deal? Go ahead, brother. Can I ride on you for a while? Chu Kuangren suddenly remembered that some experts in the cultivation world often had mounts, such as cranes, tigers, lions, and so on. He might as well get himself a mount and try it out. What kind of mount could be more eye-catching than the godly phoenix? Of course. The godly phoenix lowered its body and gestured for Chu Kuangren to get on. Divine beasts were born with noble horoscopes, and most of them were rebellious. Even the emperors of old would find it difficult to capture a divine beast as a mount. However, to the godly phoenix, Chu Kuangren was different. Although she called him brother, she treated him as her mother. It was a piece of cake for her mother to ride her. Chu Kuangren excitedly jumped onto the godly phoenix's back. It was furry, warm, and more comfortable than sitting on an electric blanket in winter. Hold on, brother. The godly phoenix said before it flapped its wings and flew into the sky. Inside the Black Heaven sect, various forces had arrived. They were all invited by Honorable Xianxia to attend the ceremony. Among them were the various sage orthodoxies and honorable orthodoxies of the Azure Dragon domain. All of them were reputable figures. Before the ceremony, the godly phoenix's birth and the myriad bird worship phenomenon had shocked many people at the scene. For a moment, everyone was discussing this matter. However, compared to that, Honorable Xianxi's expression was not so good as he cursed at the communication compass. Kuangren, today is the day you take over. Everyone from the sage orthodoxies is here, so where have you been? Hurry up and come back. Honorable teacher, I'm in a hurry to attend to something urgent. Can you hold on for a while? Chu Kuangren said. Honorable Xianxia turned off the communication compass and muttered, "This B***starred is getting more and more troublesome." Chapter 192. Inside the Longevity Hall of the Black Heaven sect. Elder Ruyan and the others were pacing back and forth anxiously. When they saw Honorable Xianxia hang up the compass, they quickly went up to him. How is it? Is Kuangren back yet? So, he's on his way. But we can't keep the guests waiting outside, can we? Then what should we do? It was Honorable Xianxi's first time encountering such a situation. Sect leader, you're one of the main characters in this inauguration ceremony. Why are you asking us what to do? Hurry up and hold them off. Elder Ruyan said helplessly. Yeah, just say some pleasantries. Hold on until the lead disciple returns. Honorable Xianxia was pushed out of the hall. Outside the hall, a group of cultivators who were there to witness the ceremony gathered together. The ones sitting at the front were the representatives of the various sage orthodoxies. For example, the Royal Azure Dynasty and the School of White Lotus. Below them were the various honorable orthodoxies of the Azure Dragon domain. Most of them were affiliated with the Black Heaven sect. At this time, everyone was chatting and laughing. What do you guys think? I wonder which virtuous person will be able to obtain the godly phoenix's appearance this time. One of the sage orthodoxies representatives said. At that, the crowd started to discuss among themselves. The appearance of the godly phoenix is the first in hundreds of thousands of years. This era of great battles is just too exciting. I'm afraid there are only a few in this world who are worthy of this divine beast. Whoever can obtain it will be a blessing in disguise. Indeed. A few honorable supremes were discussing. Meanwhile, the sky prides at the scene were extremely excited. They all hoped that they could obtain the godly phoenix and dominate this era. If I can obtain the godly phoenix, I won't have to suffer so much under Chu Kuangren. Ao Chang from the sacred lands of serene wisdom thought to himself. There were many who had the same thought as Ao Chang. When I return, I must send someone to investigate. I must find a way to control this divine beast. Yuan Hong from the Dharma sect thought. Chu Kuangren, once I get my hands on that divine beast, I don't believe I'll always be suppressed by you. Lin Beishan's eyes lit up. That's not right. Isn't this the inauguration ceremony? Why hasn't it started yet? The representative from the sacred lands of serene wisdom said unhappily. As soon as he said that, everyone felt that something was wrong. It's already late in the morning. Why hasn't it started yet? Do you really think sunbathing here is fun? What's wrong with the Black Heaven sect? Are they trying to mess with us? Just as the crowd was dissatisfied, Honorable Xianxia walked out. Everyone turned their gazes over. Honorable Xianxia, why hasn't the inauguration ceremony started yet? Yeah, where's Chu Kuangren now? Facing a quasi-sage, everyone's tone was much more relaxed. Ahem, before I pass on my position, I have a few words to say. As you all know, I've been in charge of the Black Heaven sect for more than 1,000 years. I've been working hard all these years, and 800 years ago, I fought in the North Sea with a single sword. Honorable Xianxia began to recount some of the things that had happened during his tenure as the sect leader over the years. No one disturbed him. After all, it was very normal for him to give a speech to reminisce about the past. 1 hour, 2 hours, 1.5 hours passed. Impatience gradually appeared on everyone's faces. All he had to do was give a speech and say a few words. What was the meaning of this non-stop speech? They were here to watch the ceremony, not to listen to him brag about himself. If they had the time, wouldn't it be better for them to go to the tea house and listen to a storyteller? Honorable Xianxia. At that moment, a Taoist from the Taishu temple interrupted Honorable Xianxia and said, I wonder if the inauguration ceremony can start now. Let me finish talking about my battle with the nine-headed Honorable One 300 years ago. Back then, the nine-headed Honorable One was also very famous. Everyone wanted to cry, but no tears came out. How much longer was this going to take? The sky was going to turn dark if this went on. Look, what's that? At that moment, someone in the crowd exclaimed. In the distant sky, a ball of red light swept over. Wherever it passed, the clouds were dyed a magnificent crimson. Upon closer inspection, that red light was actually a noble and gorgeous godly phoenix. The godly phoenix's head glowed brightly, and as it flapped its wings, there was a mysterious Taoist rhyme that flowed with auspicious light. It was a divine beast that was on full display. It's the godly phoenix. Could this be the godly phoenix that was born not long ago? But why would it appear here? So this is a divine beast? It's too extraordinary. Compared to it, the other beasts are not even worth mentioning. Heavens, this divine beast is indeed a divine beast. Seeing this godly phoenix, everyone present was amazed. As for some of the honorable supremes and sky prides, they could not sit still anymore. This was a divine beast. If they could tame it, not only would it be of great help to them, but it could also enhance the fate of an orthodoxy. The godly phoenix's life chart was noble. It was definitely possible. Honorable Xianxia stopped talking and looked at the godly phoenix solemnly. Wait a minute, there seems to be someone on the godly phoenix. One of the honorable supremes said in an uncertain tone. When the others heard this, they could not believe it. Idiot, the godly phoenix is a divine beast with a noble life chart. How could it allow others to sit on its back? That's right, don't treat the godly phoenix as a mount. Since ancient times, only immortals have been able to use divine beasts as mounts. Even the great emperors of old have never heard of anyone having a divine beast as a mount. No, it looks like there really is someone. As the godly phoenix approached, everyone gasped when they saw that there was indeed a figure standing on the godly phoenix's back. F***me. There's really someone there? Heavens, who would have the ability to tame a godly phoenix as a mount? Could it be an immortal that has descended into the mortal realm? And why does this person look so familiar? It's Chu Kuangren. F***, it's really him. As the godly phoenix approached the Black Heaven sect, everyone could finally see the figure on the godly phoenix's back. It was Chu Kuangren, who was dressed in white. The godly phoenix was extremely noble, and Chu Kuangren's white robe was peerless. The combination of the two created a huge impact on the crowd. At that moment, Chu Kuangren really looked like an immortal that had descended into the mortal realm. When they arrived above the Black Heaven sect, Chu Kuangren leaped down from the godly phoenix's back and stood in front of the crowd with a smile on his face. At that moment, everyone looked at him with their mouths agape. Even Honorable Xianxia was no exception. Greetings, fellow Taoists. Chu Kuangren was the first to speak, snapping everyone back to their senses. Then, countless people started to discuss among themselves. F***me, he's riding a godly phoenix. This Chu Kuangren is just too cool. How did he do it? This godly phoenix has only been born for a short period of time. We haven't even started looking for it yet, but he's already tamed it. This is just too much of a shock. A divine beast has recognized its master. This Chu Kuangren's luck is just too strong. Meanwhile, sky prides like Yuan Hong, Gu Chang'e, and Ao Chang were even more shaken. They looked at Chu Kuangren as if they were about to cry. Just a second ago, they were still thinking about how to find and tame the godly phoenix when they returned. The next second, Chu Kuangren was riding the godly phoenix right in front of them. Was there anything more shocking than this? This Chu Kuangren can't really be an immortal, can he? Why does he get all the benefits? Chapter 193. Madman, what's going on? Honorable Xianxia gulped and asked. He was too shocked. After disappearing for a few days, Chu Kuangren returned with the godly phoenix. What exactly had happened? Honorable teacher, I felt something a few days ago, so I went out and met the godly phoenix in a volcano. Chu Kuangren made up stories. No one knew where the godly phoenix came from anyway, so he could say whatever he wanted. Everyone's eyes turned red with envy when they heard what he said. Felt something? He brought the godly phoenix back just by going out? F***ck, this is destiny. This godly phoenix belonged to Chu Kuangren the moment it was born. Everyone could not help but be shocked at that thought. A divine beast's fate is extremely noble, but Chu Kuangren managed to get it to acknowledge him as its master. Doesn't that mean his fate is even more noble than a divine beast? Oh my god, this is too scary. Is he really human? Is he really an immortal? Everyone was shocked, but Honorable Xianxia could not help but laugh out loud. The heavens have blessed our Black Heaven sect with a divine beast. This is great. Kuangren, get ready, the inauguration ceremony is about to begin. Yes, honorable teacher. Under everyone's envious gaze, Chu Kuangren walked into the palace. Inside, Lil Bing and Lan Yu had already rushed over upon hearing the news. Master, quickly change your clothes. The ceremony is about to begin. Lil Bing was holding a set of clothes in her hand. It was prepared for Chu Kuangren to use during the ceremony. Outside the palace, some people were still immersed in the shock of Chu Kuangren's appearance on the godly phoenix. They could not recover from their shock for a long time. With Chu Kuangren's talent and luck, I don't believe that he won't be able to become an emperor in the future, an honorable said. That's right. It seems like we should avoid being enemies with the Black Heaven sect. With Chu Kuangren, the Black Heaven sect will definitely prosper. That's right. Sigh, this era is destined to be Chu Kuangren's era. Then what's the point of our existence? Ao Chang, Gu Chang'e, Lin Badian, and the other Sky Prides looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Amitba, Almsgiver Chu is indeed an unprecedented genius, but there is no need to be discouraged. After all, there are people who will become emperors in this era, but it doesn't mean that only one person can become an emperor. A Grand Master from the Thunder Sound Temple of the Sage Orthodoxy said. That's right. The saint once said that this world of great competition is an unprecedented change. The emergence of the great Tao is like adding oil to a raging fire. There might even be a prosperous scene where multiple emperors coexist in the world. The Spirit Illusion Holy Land Supreme Exalt said with anticipation in his eyes. Hearing this, the other heaven's favorites regained some confidence. At this moment, the palace gate opened. Chu Kuangren walked out. Everyone looked over and they were instantly shocked. His long black hair was draped behind him like smoke, and he wore a hollow jade crown on his head. He wore a moon-white, wide-sleeved robe that was embroidered with exquisite patterns and auspicious beasts using golden threads. Around his waist was a white belt with a jade inlaid on it. On the right was a golden tassel, and on the left was the Kun Wu sacred sword. Long black boots embroidered with auspicious clouds, Chu Kuangren's brand new attire made his almost flawless face and otherworldly temperament to the extreme. As bright as the sun and moon in my arms, as bright as a jade tree in the wind, as solemn as the waves in the pines, as bright as the lightning beneath the rocks, speak in human language. He's 2F** King Handsome. There's no one else in the entire firmament star who can match his temperament and looks. Not only is he talented, his luck is strong, and his looks are flawless. TSK, what a monster. Some of the female cultivators looked at Chu Kuangren with infatuation. A gentleman's words are as gentle as jade. In his house, he messes with my heart. Some of the female cultivators could not help but mutter. Chu Kuangren slowly walked out of the palace. At the same time, Taoist rhymes reverberated in the surroundings. One by one, the Black Heaven sect disciples bowed and saluted him. They lined up on both sides to form a passage with a high platform at the end. Honorable Xianxia sat on the high platform and looked at him with gratification. Chu Kuangren walked towards the high platform and stood beside Honorable Xianxia. I, Honorable Xianxia, the 9th sect leader of the Black Heaven sect, officially pass on my position to Chu Kuangren. My fellow cultivators, the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers, please bear witness that from today onwards, Chu Kuangren is the 10th sect leader of the Black Heaven sect. After that, Honorable Xianxia took out a sword-shaped jade token and handed it to Chu Kuangren. This was the token of the Black Heaven sect leader, the Black Heaven sword token. Chu Kuangren stretched out his hands and took the sword token respectfully. Your disciple will not disappoint you, honorable teacher. I will wholeheartedly take care of the Black Heaven sect. The descendant's self-sword at his waist suddenly unsheathed and hovered in the air. Then, a surge of sword-based Taoist rhymes soared into the sky. With me around, no one can bully the Black Heaven sect. With me around, everyone in the Black Heaven sect will rise to greatness. With me around, the Black Heaven sect will prosper forever. With me around, the heavens, the earth, the sun, and the moon shall bear witness, and all deities shall hear. In the distance, the mysterious Heaven Sword Mountain seemed to have been summoned, and sword hymns echoed endlessly. Countless long swords flew into the sky and moved through the clouds. Tens of thousands of sword intents intertwined in the sky, creating a magnificent and majestic scene. The sword intent of the Sword Mountain and Chu Kuangren's Taoist rhyme resonated with each other, and an unparalleled domineering aura swept across the entire area in an instant. Everyone looked at the white-robed figure on the high platform and was shocked. The eyes of the Black Heaven sect disciples were filled with fanaticism and admiration. In the distance, Elder Rian and the others were extremely pleased. Deep within the Black Heaven sect, in a few thatched cottages, a white-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the inauguration ceremony with a smile. His smile grew wider and wider until he could not help but laugh out loud. With this person here, the Black Heaven sect will prosper. Carefree laughter came from the other cottages as well. God bless the Black Heaven sect. This young man is really adorable. It was worth it for the 7th forefather to drag his heavenly deterioration 5 body into the world to protect him. Speaking of which, the 7th forefather is really lucky this time. With the heavenly deterioration 5 gone, he's even younger than us. I guess it won't be long before he ascends as well. Very good, very good. Chu Kuangren stood on the high platform in his peerless white robe. With the sword order in his hand, sword-based Taoist rhyme emanated from his body and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He truly had feelings for the Black Heaven sect. Even if he was helpless before, now that he had assumed the position of sect leader, he had the responsibility to bring glory to the Black Heaven sect. Greetings, sect leader. Greetings, sect leader. The group of Black Heaven sect disciples knelt on one knee before Chu Kuangren. Not far away, the elders bowed as well. Greetings, sect leader. Chu Kuangren nodded slightly and kept the sword order away. As the sword-based Taoist rhyme dissipated, the Sword Mountain in the distance also returned to its peaceful state. The sacred lands of Serene Wisdom, Taishu Temple, Thunder Temple, and other sage orthodoxies representatives stepped forward to congratulate him. Greetings, sect leader Chu. With sect leader Chu around, I believe the Black Heaven sect will definitely prosper. That's right. With sect leader Chu's talent, the Black Heaven sect will definitely prosper. Congratulations, sect leader Chu. If sect leader Chu has time in the future, feel free to visit our Taishu temple. We can discuss the cooperation between our 2 sects and develop together. In the face of everyone's congratulations, Chu Kuangren smiled and responded to them one by one. Although he was still immature, he already had the demeanor of an orthodoxies leader. Chapter 194. Chu Kuangren had taken over as the Black Heaven sect leader. The crowd congratulated him. At that moment, a golden chariot that was radiating rays of light arrived from afar. It exuded an extraordinary Taoist rhyme. Around the carriage were armored imperial guards. Every single one of them exuded the aura of someone who had been through hundreds of battles. The crowd looked over and was shocked. 6 godly horses pulling the chariot? Only the royal family of the Royal Azure dynasty can enjoy such treatment. Which noble of the dynasty is this? If Gu Chang'e is here, who else could it be? Gu Chang'e was surprised as well. However, he recognized the chariot and knew who it was. The chariot's curtain was lifted, and a beautiful lady in a gorgeous phoenix robe walked out. It was Princess Linglong. It's her. It's normal for her to attend Chu Kuangren's inauguration ceremony. After all, he's her fiancé. The crowd discussed. Princess Linglong got off the chariot and smiled at Chu Kuangren. Fiancé, I'm late. Please forgive me. You're welcome, Princess. Your attire today is quite nice. Princess Linglong sized Chu Kuangren up with a glimmer in her eyes. She could not help but compliment him. You flatter me, Princess. Since when was he not nice? Today, I'm here with a decree from my father. Princess Linglong took out an imperial decree and an honorable aura emanated from it. The people of the Royal Azure dynasty immediately knelt. Chu Kuangren stood still and looked at Princess Linglong with a smile. Your Highness, I don't have to kneel, do I? Of course. In the past, he did not have to kneel before the Royal Azure dynasty king. Now that he was the Black Heaven sect leader, his status was on par with the Royal Azure dynasty, so he did not have to kneel. By the will of the heavens, Fiancé Chu Kuangren is a man of virtue and talent. I'm impressed and hereby confer you the title of King Equal. Princess Linglong opened the imperial decree and read it. The crowd was shocked when they heard that. The people of the Royal Azure dynasty, especially, were dumbfounded. King Equal. That was a title that was on par with the ruler of a country. Since ancient times, only 2 or 3 people had received that title. Now it was given to Chu Kuangren. Prince Consort, accept the decree. Princess Linglong stepped forward and handed the imperial edict to Chu Kuangren. Thank you, Your Majesty. Chu Kuangren accepted the imperial edict without hesitation. You are still calling me king, Princess Linglong said with some resentment. Then, please thank our father for me. Chu Kuangren said as he rubbed his nose. Upon hearing this, Princess Linglong beamed with joy. Even the blooming of 100 flowers could not compare to the smile on her face. Many male cultivators couldn't help but sigh upon seeing this. This Chu Kuangren is a winner in life. This is too infuriating. What cultivators seek is wealth, companions, techniques, and land. He alone has them all, and everything is of the highest quality. How can I not be angry? At this moment, a woman walked out from the crowd. This person was dressed in white and had a tranquil smile on his face, making people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. When everyone looked over, they were all surprised. She was the holy maiden of the School of White Lotus. Other than attending the ceremony, the School of White Lotus has come to the Black Heaven sect this time to inform the bachelor sage of something else, the White Lotus Maiden Sage said with a faint smile. What is it? The White Lotus Maiden Sage took out a white ancient edict that was engraved with white lotus patterns. A mysterious Taoist rhyme emanated from the ancient edict. According to the leader's decree, from today onwards, the bachelor sage will officially be promoted to the supreme elder of the School of White Lotus. His treatment will be the same as the leader's. Bachelor sage, no, supreme elder, please accept this edict. Everyone was completely dumbfounded at this. Was it not enough that they had a ruler equal, now they had a supreme elder as well? F***ck, what the hell was going on? Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised as well, but after some thought, he accepted the edict. Please thank the leader for me. You're too kind, elder. The White Lotus Maiden Sage smiled. When the people from the other orthodoxies saw this, they could already guess what was going on. If Chu Kuangren is still the school of White Lotus Bachelor Sage and the fiancé of the Royal Azure Dynasty after taking over the Black Heaven Sect's sect leader's position, it would undoubtedly lower the Black Heaven Sect's status to the other two orthodoxies. That's right. That's why the Royal Azure Dynasty and the School of White Lotus would elevate Chu Kuangren's status in their orthodoxies to maintain their alliance with the Black Heaven Sect and deepen their relationship with Chu Kuangren. Many people pondered for a while before they figured out the reason behind the two orthodoxies' actions. Chu Kuangren was now the Black Heaven Sect's sect leader. How would the higher-ups of the Black Heaven Sect be happy to have a sect leader like him become a bachelor sage or the fiancé of another orthodoxies? Did that not mean that they would have to lower their heads to them? That was why the two orthodoxies made Chu Kuangren a ruler equal and a supreme elder. That position was not any lower than the dynasty lord or the sect leader. Although they understood the reason behind it, they still found it hard to believe. Within a day, he had become a sect leader, a ruler equal, and a supreme elder. It was truly shocking. Today is not only the Black Heaven Sect's inauguration ceremony, but it's also the day that the three sage orthodoxies will publicly form an alliance in front of the many forces. That's right. With Chu Kuangren around, the three sage orthodoxies will definitely be closely linked. They will rise or fall together. Chu Kuangren is amazing. The crowd was amazed. At that moment, outside the Black Heaven Sect's mountain entrance, a majestic sword-based Taoist rhyme erupted and swept in all directions. Everyone felt the sword-based Taoist rhyme and looked towards the Black Heaven Sect's mountain entrance. They saw a middle-aged man in a green robe standing with his hands behind his back. That sword-based Taoist rhyme was coming from him. Amurong Feng. I'm here to challenge the 100 Sword Spectrum's number 1, Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren, please show yourself. The middle-aged man's thunderous roar echoed throughout the Black Heaven Sect. Everyone who came to watch the ceremony was surprised. In the crowd, Taoist Murong Xian's face turned pale. It's him, the 100 Sword Spectrum's number 2, Murong Feng from the Black Warrior domain. One mountain, one sect, and two families. This man is the Murong clan's number 1 swordsman below the sages, Murong Feng. I heard that even the Murong clan's current clan head is no match for him. If it weren't for the fact that he doesn't want to be the clan head, he would have been the clan head a long time ago. I can't believe he's here to challenge Chu Kuangren on such a special day. Teske, if Chu Kuangren is defeated by this man, his reputation as a sect leader will be greatly diminished. Everyone looked at Chu Kuangren, waiting to see what he would do. Honorable teacher, did we send an invitation to the Murong clan? Chu Kuangren asked Honorable Xianxia. Honorable Xianxia shook his head and said, the Murong clan is in the Black Warrior domain. It's so far away I can't be bothered to send them off. Besides, the relationship between the one mountain, one sect, and two families was not harmonious. Sending them to watch the ceremony would only make things difficult for them. Since there's no such thing, I'll send him away now. Chu Kuangren smiled. Then, his figure turned into a stream of light and disappeared on the spot. Not many people in the crowd could catch his movement. He's so fast. While everyone was still in shock, Chu Kuangren had already arrived at the mountain entrance, facing the 100 Sword Spectrum's number 2. As soon as they met, their sword-based Taoist rhymes collided. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.